To the Duxbury Select Board meeting, Monday, March 31st, 2025. We are going to start with an executive session. So on our open meeting agenda, we have Pledge of Allegiance, open forum, and new business. Those matters will be all taken up in open session. So, Fernando, when you have a moment,
yes. I'll read it.
I would entertain a motion that we go into executive session for a particular purpose.
Yes. Wait, it should be, this is my clerk copy.
Yeah, you should have it right here.
Yep.
Right in front.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
I move it, we go into executive session for the following purpose. Discussion regarding strategy with respect to litigation, since an open meeting may have detrimental effects on the litigating position of the town regarding the following matters. Watermark versus Town of Duxbury and R.H. Benea Cranberry Company, Stamper versus Town of Duxbury Conservation Commission, Husk et al. Versus Duxbury Board of Health, Charles J. Husk versus Wayne Dennison et al., Town of Duxbury Zoning Board of Appeals and Building Commissioner, Charles J. Husk and Michael McGee et al., Town of Duxbury Select Board, Duxbury Energy Storage LLC versus Town of Duxbury Zoning Board of Appeals, and finally, Town of Duxbury versus Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Honorable Governor Maura Healey and EOHLC. If the chair so declares in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, and the Select Board will adjourn immediately after the completion of this executive session and reconvene in open session on or around 6:30 p.m.
All right, I think I need to read something
Yeah,
here.
you do.
Okay, as chair, I declare the necessity of an executive session to go into, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, as to do so in open session may have a detrimental effect on the town's litigating position. Do you care to have a second? All right, and it requires a roll call vote.
Cindy, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
All right, we are
Okay.
in executive session. Conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote, whoops, our microphone's on?
Yep.
Remote attendance or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members. The meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. The meeting will be recorded by the local scene, formerly known as PAC-TV. Members of the public who wish to watch may do so by viewing the Duxbury Government Access channels, Verizon 39 or Comcast 9. Viewers can visit thelocalscene.media/Duxbury for information about Duxbury programming, including streaming and watching replays on Duxbury YouTube. I call this meeting to order. We did have an executive session at 6 o'clock, which has adjourned. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is open forum. These are items that are not on the agenda, things you'd like to raise with the board that we can potentially add to a future agenda. But first, I will start with our board.
Thank you.
Just to put on the agenda, hopefully for some time in May, the Coastal Resiliency Task Force is going to come back with a climate statement. Climate statement.
I can't hear you, Cindy, at all. Microphone on?
Yeah.
It is, but it's not for the House.
It doesn't, yeah. The Coastal Resiliency Task Force is coming back in May with a climate statement.
Right, and the three of us met jointly with the Coastal
Yeah, we
Resiliency
did.
Task Force. This is our third meeting tonight already?
Yes.
Something like that, okay. I do have a few things to share. Oh, I'm sorry.
If
Go
you don't
ahead.
mind, is that okay? It's just to, public service announcement. The Powder Point Bridge Advisory Committee was established on the 21st of March. The chair is Ed Mayo. Vice chair is Paul Brogner, and the clerk is Kerry Kozlowski. And on March 26, myself, Rennie Reed, Sheila Skarsky, and David Enriquez and Cindy Julius, the other members of the Powder Point Bridge Advisory Committee, met with Marco Pereira, the DOT project manager, for just a get to know people. And it was quite a nice conversation. But anyway, just kind of feeling each other out, as they say. And the first meeting of the Powder Point Bridge Advisory Committee is on the 11th of April at the Senior Centers on Zoom, and they kick it off at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I ask members of the public, it is an open meeting, please do come along and get to participate in that first meeting and offer your input. Thank you.
Thanks, Fernando. I have a couple of things to share with the group. Several of these relate to MBTA communities. The first is that the MBTA Communities Working Group hosted well-attended public forums on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week to share the compliance options with the community. We asked the participants to select which of the three options they believe are most appropriate for the community. You may recall we presented three at the last select board meeting. Half of the votes came in favor of the village option. The other half of the votes were split roughly between the remaining two options. So the following night, Thursday, the working group met, discussed the input received at the public forums, and voted to recommend the village for consideration by the select board and the planning board as we move forward. So in other words, the working group had three options, presented it to the public, and is now going to recommend one of those options to the planning board and the select board. Members of the working group would like to meet with all town boards and committees within the next couple of weeks to share the details of the MBTA Communities Law and the town's approach to complying with it. The working group has asked that as liaisons, the five of us here, that we reach out to our assigned boards and committees to request that they include MBTA communities as an agenda item for one of their upcoming meetings. If we would do that, please.
Yeah, Brian, could we just maybe add, or maybe I'll join the MBTA working group. There is a piece around communication and
Okay.
engagement.
Yep.
I spoke with several people, or several people reached out following that meeting. There's still very angry people out there, and totally against it, and quite frankly, not listening.
Okay.
So I think we just need to maybe address that and see what we can do to kind of maybe change that dynamic, or at least get people to understand what we're trying to do here. Because if it doesn't work, then we've got problems as a town with funding and everything else like that. So I think we just need to maybe add that to the agenda.
Okay, thank you. And the final thing, this is not MBTA related. Just want to acknowledge how our residents and employees have been feeling about town finances recently. The people on all sides of the issues are troubled and concerned about for a variety of different reasons. They have very legitimate perspectives on what and how town services are provided. I recognize tensions have been high and morale among town employees has unfortunately been low. To the town employees, I say thank you for your dedicated public service and promise that things will get better. And to town residents, I say thank you for speaking up and ask that you continue to do so. But overall, as we move forward toward fiscal '26, let's please remain mindful that at the end of the day, we all care about Duxbury and should approach each other in that fashion. All of us, employees and residents alike, contribute to the character of the town. With that, we'll move on to new business. The first is discussion. Oh,
Open
excuse me.
forum.
Yep.
Betsy Sullivan, Washington Street. I would like to, and great segue, thanks, good lead-in. I would like to implore the Select Board and the school committee, for that matter. I think that free speech is a gift that we all enjoy in this country. Does not include falsehoods. There has been a great deal of communication, some of it very positive, some of it is very helpful, but some of it has been toxic. And to reference what you're saying, I think that many members of our staff, and the schools can speak to their staff, but I can't imagine that they're immune to it, are feeling beleaguered. Their stories come out, they are not true, they are not answered. So I would really encourage the Select Board that in your goals that we manage, and I'm asking you to do the impossible, I understand that, but to respond to some of the toxic statements, the untrue statements against individuals, departments, boards. We had no contested races because what fool would put themselves through it? We are going to have trouble finding volunteers because who wants to volunteer their time and be told that they're complicit in a great hoax? It is very, very difficult, and I think our time for being silent and listening and trying to let it come to a natural conclusion has to end, and that we have to stand up for the people that work for us, the people that volunteer for us, and the truth. And I'm really, really hoping that that is part of your goals that you discuss later this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Open forum. All right. We'll move on to discussion of conservation restriction number 49 on the former Pink property presented by the Conservation Commission. I think I saw Nancy. Oh, there we go. Hi, Pat. All right, Pat, go right ahead. We've read your materials. Seems pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Yes, it is straightforward. Pat Loring, Beaver Brook Lane. I'm here tonight to get your approval and signatures on this conservation restriction. The Pink property was purchased by the town in 2021, and it was a high priority at that time, and mainly because the property is within 100% of the property, 64 acres, is within the wellhead protection zone. So it's protecting our drinking water. It connects to 150 acres of existing open space, and already Dave Dilbrook constructed some trails from connecting to existing conservation land. It's also in agriculture, as I'm sure you're aware. It has a 26-acre working cranberry farm. It was a win-win. It's open to the public unless the farmer is doing some agricultural activities that require keeping the public out for the most part.
I just want,
Cindy.
hi, Pat. I have a question about the agriculture, and I've walked in that property. It's beautiful. That bog is beautiful. It seems to me, and I'm not recalling as much language about agricultural activities in previous conservation restrictions, but I may be totally off there. I mean, maybe that's not true. Maybe it's always there. But are there any long-term plans for any additional agriculture in that property?
No, there's no long-term plans for additional grandbearing. And the language is the same as particularly the Mary conservation restrictions that you approved
Okay.
on all the Mary bogs, which are currently being worked.
Okay.
Yes, it's the same language or similar language.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Can I ask a
Amy,
question?
please, yeah.
Hi, Pat. I believe I listened to a Conservation Commission hearing that where they were discussing hunting around this area. And I'm wondering, does the conservation restriction preclude hunting?
No, the conservation restriction does not. It doesn't address it at all. That is addressed from the Conservation Commission and their areas that are not allowed.
Thank you.
We also have the right of first refusal on the house lot, which did not go with this purchase. So the house lot is embedded in this property. The Pinks in the future want to sell their house lot, and the town must rent.
Hi, Nancy Rufo, Conservation Administrator. I can speak to a little bit more about the hunting. Right now, there is hunting permitted on the backside of the Wright Reservoir, where we have not had existing trails to date. Our new land management assistant, Michael G. Virgilio, has been working hard to complete that loop. So we'll probably revisit the hunting discussion in the fall. I'm not sure if the setbacks can be met now that we do have or will have a blazed trail. But right now, it is allowed on the backside.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other questions from the board?
No, no
Any
questions.
questions from the public? Hearing none, ready for a motion?
Yes. I move that the Select Board approve and execute conservation restriction number 49 from the town of Duxbury to the Wildlands Trust, Inc. for the property formerly known as the Pink property, located at 0 Old Cordwood Path and consisting of approximately 65 plus or minus acres pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 184, Section 31-33, as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. All right.
Thank you, Nancy.
Next is Special Education Reserve Fund Transfer presented by Superintendent Klingeman and Lisa Freely.
Hi,
Hi.
Lisa Freely, Director of Business and Finance for the schools. The school department's requesting that the Select Board vote to authorize the use of $250,000 from the Special Education Reserve Fund. The Reserve Fund was established in 2018 to offset the impact of unanticipated and unbudgeted special education expenses incurred during the fiscal year. This fund has been funded in recent years through year-end monies turned back to the town. Throughout the FY25 budget planning process, the district discussed the potential need to access these funds due to increased cost of out-of-district placements, transportation expenses, and other contracted service obligations. These expenses are expected to exceed our allocated budget for the current fiscal year. To date, we project that our out-of-district transportation expenses will exceed the budgeted operating budget amount by $470,000. As of January 31st, the Special Education Reserve Fund balance was $1,174,620, which exceeds the allowable cap by $191,717. The reserve fund is capped at 2% of the FY24 net school spending budget, or $982,903. After consulting with the town's finance director, Mary McKinnon, we proposed using $250,000 of the excess funds to bring the reserve fund within compliance while addressing transportation-related special education costs for FY25. This amount also takes into consideration the interest earned by the reserve fund as a high-yield investment. This request has already been approved by the school committee, which voted 3-0 in favor of this request during their meeting on February 5th. The use of these funds supports our goal of maintaining compliance within the reserve cap while also addressing immediate needs within the school district's special education program. We anticipate being able to absorb the remaining expense within our operating budget and special fund accounts. We respectfully request that the board approve the use of these funds as outlined.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Mike?
When was the vote taken by the school committee?
They voted on February 5th, 2025.
Does anybody from the school committee want to address whether to ask for more from the reserve fund given town meeting?
I don't know
Yeah,
if
I mean,
they would.
election.
That is not my recommendation at this time.
Okay.
But certainly if they chose to do that, we could.
A bigger question, and I don't know if you have an answer for it, but is there any efforts to looking at the state? Yeah. Are there any efforts at the state level or by our town to increase the amount of reimbursement from the state for special education funding and more oversight on the costs with this transportation and other costs? Because obviously,
There is often a lot of conversation and certainly more in the last couple of years around that. Right now, the state is reimbursing the special education circuit breaker at 75%, and that is what they're calling fully funded. There is advocacy to continue to try to increase that, and certainly that there is advocacy, and as of last week with a group of my peers, we also were speaking with our association about how can we advocate around the costs, because the tuition costs do not follow the state's like allowable percentage increases. They can increase tuitions whatever they want, which they show us regularly. We had tuition increases last year at 14%. And then transportation is unregulated. So we're looking at ways to partner together with other districts to see, maybe build our own collaborative, maybe, this district has kids going to the same place and trying to partner together to do more of that. So no easy answer to this conversation because it's still ongoing discussions, but we do continue to discuss it and advocate.
thank you.
I think Fernando and then Amy.
So just maybe to help education, maybe mine, but the 250,000 is going to meet special education needs.
Yes. Specifically, we're going to transfer out-of-district transportation costs
For special education
for
needs.
special education needs.
So
yes.
this is just a process to withdraw funds from the Special Education Reserve Fund to address special education needs, right? The money's going.
Yes, the money is going essentially from a special education account
Yeah.
to be used by the special education program.
Yes.
The mechanism that's in place was put in 2018,
Yep.
which at that time, I believe it required town meeting approval in addition to the school committee and the select board's approval. And then to access those funds, it requires school committee and select board approval only.
Okay, the funds are being used in the right place. bottom
Correct.
line. Thank you.
Yes.
Amy?
So my question is kind of on that line. We as a select board are being asked this question. So I'm curious as to could these funds, do these funds need to stay with the school, or because it's funds that weren't utilized, could they be used for another purpose outside of the schools?
No, this was an article that was set up at town meeting a few years ago just for this, because we were getting hit with costs for special education not just for transportation, but a whole host of things. And it was putting us over a barrel for many years. And so this was earmarked specifically for this because these do come up.
No, I understand, but what we're looking at here was there's a surplus, and you're only allowed to have a certain amount in excess there.
Yep.
And so we've collected more than we've had to use, which is a great problem to have. I'm just wondering if the funds are earmarked or tied to the schools, or, I mean, right here, we're all, our minds obviously have been on trying to find funding sources for all kinds of things in the last few weeks. So I'm just asking the question is, do these, and again, I'm not suggesting taking the funds away, I'm just asking the question of, are they required to stay with the school?
I believe they are, but I don't have a definitive answer. I'd have to look it up.
So I have a copy of the bylaw
Perfect.
if that's helpful for you.
Yes,
I can
thank
bring
you.
Can you read it out since that question's been asked by the public, can you please read it out?
Okay, I'm going to read the whole thing.
Yes,
I'll
please.
apologize in advance. So the objective, pursuant to the Municipal Modernization Act, special education reserve accounts are allowed by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 13E, to offset the impact of unanticipated, unbudgeted special education expenses incurred during the fiscal year. The Special Education Reserve Fund provides a proactive strategic approach to planning for unforeseeable special education costs and to provide stability in the delivery of public education that could otherwise be adversely impacted by unanticipated costs. Transfers in. The target funding ceiling for this fund shall be 2% of the annual net school spending of the school district. In accordance with MGL Chapter 40, Section 13E, the balance in the reserve fund cannot exceed 2% of the annual net school spending. The target fund floor shall be $100,000 as of April 1st. If the balance of the fund drops below the funding minimum balance, the town and school shall formulate a plan to restore the fund as of April 1st. The first funding source will be free cash derived from year-end surpluses from the appropriated school budget. Undesignated fund balance, free cash, may be transferred into the reserve fund. Per Section 13E of MMA, transfers into the Special Education Reserve Fund may be made by majority vote of the school committee and a majority vote of the legislative body. Transfers out. To request a transfer out of the Special Education Reserve Fund, the school department will provide a summary of the unbudgeted, unexpended expenses and the overall impact to the fiscal year operating budget. This report will include expenses reported but not limited to the below categories: out-of-district tuitions, special education transportation contracted services, special education medical therapy contracted services. All transfers out of the Special Education Reserve Fund must be approved by majority vote of the school committee and a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen. No encumbrances shall be made on the fund until such approvals are met. Reserve procedures. Below is an outline of the specific procedure for calculating requested deposits to or withdrawals from the fund. Confidentiality of student records is the utmost importance to Duxbury Public Schools. The town of Duxbury and its committees acknowledge the need to maintain student confidentiality per state and federal laws, FERPA and IDEA. IDEA Part B 20 USC 1400 and 34 CFR Part 300. Do you want me to read all that? There's just so many. All right, so when requesting a transfer into the Special Education Reserve Fund, the school committee will no later than 45 days prior to special or annual town meeting give notice to the town manager and town finance director regarding proposed transfer in order to prepare the warrant article. The Special Education Reserve Fund policy will be reviewed periodically for modification to ensure that the reserve fund is meeting its objective and its financial goals.
I listened carefully, and I did not hear anything in there that specifically spoke to the funds needing to stay in this program or used exclusively for the school. I didn't hear that.
I thought I did.
I thought
You
I
did?
did
I thought
also.
I
Okay,
did.
where did you hear that?
Yeah. It was so fast, but I did hear
Sorry.
it, right? But it says basically to transfer to special education.
Yes.
It didn't say transfer
Could
to.
I see it, please?
Correct, yes, it only speaks to transferring to special education.
That's what I heard.
Mike, I have a question. Thank you. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And I see that you've got your same thing up on your screen. There's a paragraph in our materials about the future use of funds, monitoring, and there's a paragraph about the monitoring and future use of funds in the materials that we got. And it's talking, and a question, because it sort of piggybacks on that, is
Yes.
that should the sped reserve fund not need additional replenishment,
Yep.
we will advocate that the remaining funds be allocated towards school capital needs.
Yes.
So how does that,
Yes.
how does that work with what you've just read?
Exactly.
So the long and short of it is, at the end of the school year, if the school department has operating budget funds remaining, the first direction of those funds would be to top off the sped reserve account.
Okay,
If the sped reserve account is topped off, which it has been for the last couple of years as a result of COVID, then those funds would be, we would advocate for those funds to be used, the funds go into free cash, but we would advocate for those funds to be used towards school department capital projects,
Okay.
which then just goes through our regular annual capital process anyway. So when they
Okay.
look at allocating those funds, they're
okay, so you're not taking money out of the
No.
fund, you're, okay.
No,
Perfect,
the
thank you.
funds stay in there, and because of COVID, we've been very fortunate not to have to access these funds, and this has been the perfect storm for every situation, and now we're faced with a situation where tapping into these funds will do two purposes. It will help us alleviate some of the burden on the operating budget, but also we will then begin compliance with the maximum amount that we should have in there.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Good.
I do recall during the budget process for fiscal '26 that special education transportation was a particularly important issue.
Yes.
So I understand why that's in front of us. Anything from the public? All right, may I have a motion?
Yes, I move that Select Board approve the school department's special education reserve fund transfer in the amount of $250,000 as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next is our...
Could I keep that? Thank you.
Next, we'll be reaffirming the DEI proclamation presented by the DEI committee. Is that Jeannie, maybe?
No, I'm the chair of the
Oh, okay.
DEI steering committee, and I see that the DEI steering committee is present, so I move, what do you say, the clerk, I should know this, but I call the DEI steering committee to order. All right, so we're all good. So back in February 1st and March 2029, 2021, the town of Duxbury Selectboard voted in place this proclamation around basically ensuring that a town is safe and welcoming community for all. And so this is every year when we reorganize as a select board. The clerk has the honor of reading out the proclamation, and basically. The select board then basically, votes in support of this proclamation. So, with that, any questions, discussions?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. I had occasion to reflect on this recently, and you mentioned 2021, and we were in a tough place as a community. We were hurt, and there was a world international spotlight on this town for not a good reason. But when I think about these words, they've been put into action. Our library, I see that created a master plan. They budgeted to make the library welcoming and inclusive, and celebrate and educate folks in our community. Our police have worked with groups to help build trust in our community. Our schools have a wonderful DEI director who's also present here. I had occasion, accidentally, watching a budget meeting, to watch Caitlin present, and she is a tremendous asset to our community and to helping our young people learn now so that they can succeed in the future. So I only say this because these are words, but we should be proud of the effect that this has had on our community.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. In fact, the origin of the steering committee was to turn these words into action. And as we met as a steering committee, we kind of worked on it, and in the end, we kind of came to the conclusion and the observation that actually there's no need for a forum, which we originally envisioned, to have that conversation, because the town as a community is there's many touch points, many committees that are working towards this goal of creating a safe and welcoming community. In fact, at our last presentation last year, Caitlin kind of went through and kind of described all the different groups, both committees, non-profits. There's a huge number of folks in Duxbury that are working hard and making progress and addressing some of the issues. But yes, we're heading in the right direction in terms of that safe and welcoming community for all.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys okay at the back there? The steering committee is, I think, I really appreciate the words of my fellow select board member, Mike McGee. So unless there's anything else the committee wants to add, I think we're all nodding. We're all in a good place. So I have the honor of reading. Oh,
Karen?
Oh, Karen.
You can go to the
Please,
microphone, please.
To the microphone.
Karen Wong, Meeting House Road. I'm on the Town DEI Committee and co-chair of Duxbury for All. I just want to say thank you. This is not a small thing that you're doing. We are very fortunate in this community to have so much support from our town leaders, and I just wanted to say a big thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
You
Yes,
guys
sir.
do a great job.
Hi, I'm Fred Lequier, Washington Street, and part of Duxbury for All. And I want to thank the Select Board for all you have been doing. I want to thank you for your attendance at trivia night,
Oh,
because
boy.
what we're trying to do, the Rotary Club, through our various agencies, is to try and make a community better and more welcoming. And I really want to thank you all for what you've been doing.
All right. Thank you.
We thank you guys.
Yep.
Even if we didn't do so
We
well
didn't
this
do so
year.
good at trivia.
Well, you know why? Because
We had fun,
I wasn't able to
Because
attend.
Fernando wasn't there.
We
I
were not
was-
in
I
last.
was.
Yeah,
I
that was
missed.
it, Fernando.
That was it.
We were floundering without you.
Next year, I'll order the right amount of tickets. So, Town of Duxbury Select Board, statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Duxbury Select Board is committed to ensuring that our town is a safe and welcoming community that embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion. We unequivocally condemn discrimination in all its forms. As elected leaders, we recognize our responsibility to understand and address racial inequality and all other forms of discrimination in Duxbury. Change starts at the local level, and a better understanding and action in our own community can contribute to effective systemic change at the regional, state, and national levels. To that end, we will work to educate ourselves, town employees, and town residents on social and racial justice issues. We will review our existing policies, practices, and procedures, and where necessary, we will enact change to begin to build a stronger, more equitable community, including efforts to hire and retain a more diverse workforce. We'll work to ensure that Duxbury is a place where all individuals can live happily, free of fear, and with equal access to opportunities, regardless of race, religion, class, ethnicity, age, ability, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Adopted by the Duxbury Board of Selectmen on March 31st, 2025.
Do we have a motion? That's,
There isn't anything in here.
would you like to offer that as a motion?
I do. I move to accept the proclamation, our statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? You guys have it, the motion carries. Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
I'm going to abstain from this next discussion. This has to do with the health insurance stuff.
Okay.
Are you gonna-
You know, I think
Right.
that was
I'm not
one
going
of
to
the
leave the room.
first
I'm going to sit in the front. I don't think
motions, one of the first votes that we took when we came on.
All right, next is discussion regarding the town's health insurance plan. I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and vote, although I'm not going to leave the room. I believe Amy is going to recuse herself as well, so we're going to hand the keys to you, Fernando,
Oh, no,
To,
I wasn't ready for this.
to run the discussion on the health insurance plan, but you're in good hands with
Right.
Jeannie. So
Okay.
we'll step down.
Good evening. I'm Jeannie Horn, the Human Resources Director for the town of Duxbury. I stand before you as part of our annual exercise to set the HMO, PPO, dental, basic life insurance rates effective June 1st, 2025. But it's also a follow-up to my meeting with you in the
Right.
fall regarding retiree health insurance rates, where you'll remember that I delivered the information that led to increasing retiree MedX2 by 34% and Medicare PPO Blue Freedom RX by 19.9%. So part of that story was that we are partially self-insured for those two plans. So the RX portion of those is different than the HMO PPO plans, so we don't have as much control over those costs. So you might recall that part of those cost increases were related to the Inflation Reduction Act that was set by the federal government. So to some extent, those rates are outside of our control. But I still wanted to circle back with the Select Board regarding some questions that were asked at that time. In the fall, the Select Board asked me to explore other insurance possibilities, and actually I've done that with our independent insurance consultant cooking company, and they are here today, and they'll be presenting part of this information to you as well tonight. We looked at our other competitive set communities, which is it's really helpful to have that group of 18 communities that we can constantly refer back to. Of those communities, we're the only ones, and I've said this before, so a lot of what you're going to hear me say is what I've repeated during the budget process leading up to town meeting, but it bears repeating. We're the only one of our competitive set communities who is self-funded. And that is a difference maker for us as a community, because you'll see that it is saving a lot of money. So we're getting a great product for a great price because we have a great team doing it. I don't do this work alone. I work with the insurance committee, and I work with our independent health insurance consultants. And together we work really hard to ensure that we are fulfilling the mission of the town of Duxbury, which is to deliver services in the most fiscally and innovative manner. So in order to do that, we took a look at what we were asked to do by the Select Board. So Cook & Company will be presenting a consolidated report with those results. In addition, one of the first questions that was asked by the Select Board was to see if we could do some means testing
Right.
on our retiree group to potentially apply a sliding scale for our retiree health insurance rates. And with a little bit of research, I was able to determine that the Centers for Medicaid Services is already doing means testing on our retiree groups, so that it means that our retiree prescription drug plans are already means tested, and we have a handful of retirees who already get a $34 discount, and that discount is passed along in our billing from Blue Cross Blue Shield. So that is already happening to the extent that it does through that automated process. And then retirees also have the option to meet with their local Shine counselor. So there are hundreds of Medicare plans that are available to retirees, some at no cost. So retirees are under no obligation to take our health insurance, but they can certainly explore other options through their Shine counselor. And they can help them compare those other plans and find out what's best for them. And then another question that was asked.
Sorry, Jeannie, before you go on, sorry to interrupt. So, I mean, these are good points. Have you been able to share this information to our retirees that they are getting a discount? There are means tested for prescription, and they have this option to go. Has that been shared with them?
We plan to do that. So
Okay.
tonight allows us to set the rates so that we
Okay.
can then turn around and communicate
Got it.
with our retirees and with our active plan
Okay.
participants. So that's exactly what we plan to do.
Okay,
And
great.
those communications will go out this week.
All right, thank you.
Yes. So in addition to that, we were asked to review our self-insured health plans and compare them against our other competitive set communities. So the comparisons will include, it will compare Duxbury's plans to the Group Insurance Commission, which is referred to as the GIC. So that's the state plan that members of the community have been talking about. And there was one reference to we could save $1.7 million if we went to the GIC. That's misinformation. So we'll be providing the facts around that. And in addition to that, so that's the GIC. We also, another comparable plan is the Mayflower Joint Purchase Group. And then the other one was Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association plan. So those are all in the report that was provided to the Select Board last week. So I just wanted to close the loop on that. So in terms of our PPO, HMO, dental, and basic life insurance rates, the town of Duxbury provides eligible employees, retirees, and their dependents with various insurance plan options, as well as ongoing education and wellness opportunities. Together, we have demonstrated our ongoing commitment to long-term health, preventative care, and emergency room alternatives such as the Blue Care Line, telehealth, urgent care, minute clinics, and others which help contain our overall health insurance costs. And as you'll see, one of the benefits of being self-insured is that we have aggregated data as it relates to our claims experience. So we can design our plans and our available benefits to address those chronic conditions that we have within our own community, rather than taking on a risk pool of a larger community where we have no transparency in terms of costs, plan designs, or claims experience. So that's a big advantage for Duxbury. As a part of that effort, the town's insurance committee, which is made up of a finance committee representative, a select board representative, the superintendent of schools, the town manager, our health insurance consultants, a Blue Cross Blue Shield rep, the HR department, and the finance director, the school business finance director, and the HR director from the town. I think that covers everybody. We meet on a monthly basis to review our claims trends and plan performance to ensure continuous financial oversight. We're actually held up as a model throughout the state in terms of how self-insurance for health insurance should be done and can be done. And also, it's important to note that many of our area communities had an override because of their health insurance expenses. That is not the reason why we had our override. So our self-insured health insurance model has delivered average rate increases and costs well below other models used in our competitive set communities, and I've already named those. With the self-insured health insurance model, our medical claims are paid directly instead of paying a fixed premium to an insurance company. We purchase stop-loss insurance to limit the town's liability in cases of high cost or catastrophic claims, and we hire a third-party administrator to handle network access, claims processing, and other administrative responsibilities. Self-insurance has allowed the town of Duxbury to have more autonomy, as I said, over plan design and the management of health insurance benefits relative to our specific population. This year, due to external factors, which have flooded the marketplace, including increased demand for health care services, higher prices for medical procedures, prescription drugs, and hospitalizations, our costs are higher than projected, as detailed in the attached Town of Duxbury Fiscal Year 26 Health Insurance Outlook, which, as I said, will be presented by our independent health insurance consultant, Cook & Company, specifically Danielle Chaplick, who comes to us with a wealth of experience. So as a result, the Insurance Committee recommends the following effective June 1st, 2025, a 9% rate increase for our Blue Cross Blue Shield health insurance plans, both the HMO Network Blue New England and the PPO Blue Care Elect. And as a reminder, the town pays 75% of those costs, and employees pay 25% of those costs. We have a 50-50 split with retirees. No rate change for the Blue Cross Blue Shield retiree health insurance plans at this time. Those rates are set in November for December deductions from pensions. And then there will be a 2.5% rate increase for the Delta Dental PPO Plus Premier Insurance Plan and a 1.8% increase. I know, I didn't name it. and a 1.8% rate increase for the Delta Dental Premier Voluntary Enhanced Table Insurance Plan. The carrier sets those rates and names those plans, and the employees and retirees pay 100% of that rate. And there will be no rate change for Boston Mutual Basic Life Insurance. The carrier sets those rates, and the town pays 75, 25, and 50/50, and those rates are good until next year. So if there are any questions on this portion, I'd be happy to answer that, and then we can move into the presentation from Cook and Company.
Jeannie, there's a really good table in the packet which describes the cost differentials between our insurance versus the two GICs and the Mayflower. Will that be covered in the presentation? The actual numbers is quite impressive, actually.
Yes.
How much more expensive the other insurance providers are.
Yes.
Will that be covered?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, and I want to say, too, it was a good exercise, so we appreciate the opportunity.
All right.
And
cool.
I will turn the presentation over to Danielle and Sue Shalou.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this evening the important issue impacting the community of Duxbury, which is the rising costs of healthcare and the town's subsequent response to managing its health insurance in a fiscally responsible capacity. Healthcare, as Jeannie said, is a significant expenditure for employers, especially municipalities. For Duxbury's, costs are expected to reach approximately $8.7 million in fiscal year 26. However, this number is not just a line item. It represents Duxbury's commitment to the well-being of employees and retirees who have dedicated their careers to public service. Healthcare is an extremely complex landscape for employers, regardless of the sector, and one that continues to evolve year over year at a rapid pace. The challenges for Duxbury and other communities alike extend far beyond managing claims and risk. They are deeply rooted in the health insurance industry, which is why we wanted to put together the report to highlight the ongoing challenges posed by rising healthcare costs and trends that are significantly impacting municipal budgets and employee benefits across the Commonwealth. We also wanted to take this opportunity, as Jeannie mentioned, to discuss the town's administrative structure it has elected through self-funding, and to compare that to other market options and cost trends. Typically, municipalities in Massachusetts generally fund their insurance through either self-funding, fully insured, or group purchase arrangements, which Jeannie discussed. None of these are a one-size-fits-all. They all have their nuances. Choosing a particular arrangement is based on many factors that can be complex, but particularly group size, risk pool, and administrative capacity. If you refer to page 3 of our report, we outline the pros and cons of each type of funding mechanism that the town has continually evaluated year over year. It is very important to emphasize that while self-insurance cannot always be leveraged by every employer, it is generally considered to be ideal because it allows an entity the ability to pay directly for medical claims rather than relying on a fixed premium from an insurance company, which may be very costly, especially in the long run. Self-insurance also allows an entity to achieve long-term cost savings in years where claims have been lower than costs and expenses. By hiring a third-party administrator to handle claims and access to care
an entity can maintain a level of autonomy that facilitates better decision-making that is specific to their particular population. In the case of Duxbury, this structure has allowed the town to incentivize its employees to make more cost-effective health choices, ultimately benefiting both individuals and the town and its budget. Moreover, through diligent financial oversight and the establishment of its health insurance committee, the town has been able to accumulate a trust fund of over $7 million to protect itself in years where claims exceed costs. This fund served as a safety net, especially providing stability in years of unpredicted claims activity. This is something that not all municipalities who are self-insured are able to achieve, but it is a testament to the successful management of the town's risk pool. As Jeannie mentioned, several group purchasing options exist for municipalities that allow cities and towns to pool their risk together. Many of these are explained in page 4 of this report. As she mentioned, this includes the Massachusetts Group Insurance Commission, MIA, and a regional purchaser, the Mayflower Municipal Health Group. As illustrated on page 5 in the chart that was mentioned before, Duxbury's costs are well below these purchasers and fall well below market trends as well, due to its successful management of its risk pool. Yet, having said all of this, we must remain vigilant. The healthcare landscape is changing rapidly, driven by various market dynamics that threaten to inflate costs going forward. Many dynamics are happening right now in Massachusetts that are affecting affordability. We've seen insurer consolidations. This has limited competition, especially from municipalities. Providers are demanding higher prices, much attributed to the mergers and acquisitions that are going on in the marketplace. Premiums and member cost sharing are outpacing wages and salaries. As we saw with Steward Health, hospitals are struggling to keep its doors open, and there is a fear that there will be more to come. Because of these dynamics, as mentioned in our report, family health premiums are now the second highest in the United States, and nearly 40% of all Massachusetts residents are struggling to afford health care. At the same time, numerous dynamics are driving up healthcare costs within the health insurance industry. Jeannie mentioned a few of these, but it's worth mentioning again. Demand for healthcare services are increasing due to an aging population and increases in chronic disease management. Higher prices for services affected by inflation, technology, labor shortages, particularly nurses and PCPs, and high administrative expenses. Surges in prescription drug, specifically specialty medications. Many of you may be reading about what is being talked about right now with the cost impact of GLP-1s. This is a class of medications that has historically been used to treat diabetes, but in recent years has also been used to treat weight management. Certainly, a lot of promise exists for these drugs in lowering chronic diseases and comorbidities. However, right now, the market is experiencing the investment in these medications. Particularly, there was recently a report from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts where 1 year ago, Blue Cross spent $75 million on these GLP-1s. In 1 year, that has tripled to over $300 million, and now 5 GLP-1s represent 20% of all Blue Cross Blue Shield pharmacy spend. No doubt that this is unsustainable. Provider costs are also increasing. Much of this has to do with lower reimbursements for Medicare and Medicaid, and industry consolidations, and again, technology and very expensive treatments. These are all of these dynamics between what's happening in Massachusetts and what's happening in healthcare are affecting insurance premiums. And you're seeing some of the largest increases in decades. I believe on page 7, you'll see the GIC having increases between 10 to 17%, Maya 10 to 20%, in the direct carrier purview 10 to up to 30%. This is not sustainable for municipalities, and options are absolutely limited. Fortunately, Duxbury, as Jeannie said, has been quite successful in managing its self-insurance. And it has positioned the town positively in this year. However, these dynamics that I've mentioned are going to persist, and it is very important that we be judicial with costs going forward. As part of that, the town has evaluated other options, such as the GIC, Mayflower Municipal Health Group, and others. And I would like to ask my colleague Sue to come up and talk specifically about those numbers. But overall, the town is well positioned where it is and comes in much lower than mostly all of these other options, which is fortunate.
All right, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm almost embarrassed to say that I've been doing this for 38 years. Every time I say that number, I can't believe it. Basically providing, basically providing health plan consulting specifically to Massachusetts municipalities. Clearly a completely different world and a completely different animal than the private sector.
Yeah.
You have budget constraints, union negotiations, Massachusetts statutes that sort of dictate how you do things. There's not much more I can say that Jeannie and Danielle haven't already said, but I do want to say the reason I have admitted to the fact I've been doing this for 38 years is because this renewal season for 2025 is one of the most difficult ones that I have lived through. I know a 9% increase in your budget hits your budget really hard. It hits your employees' pocketbooks really hard. I have the advantage of being able to compare you to a lot of other communities and clients that we work with. Some are self-insured, just like Duxbury. Others are in joint purchase groups, like Danielle said, either in the GIC, the state plan, or Maya, which is the insurance arm of the Mass Municipal Association. So I'm not disputing that 9% is tough, but I think, again, as Danielle said, because the town of Duxbury has done such a great job of managing your self-insurance health trust, it's allowed you to weather the storms. You have historically had lower increases than many, many, many other communities, many of the big joint purchasing groups. This happens to be a really difficult year across the board. So a couple of things have been discussed. One is, should the town of Duxbury be self-insured? My response to that is that you've done a terrific job. First of all, I want to say, right now we're working with 50 Mass municipalities. We certainly have worked with others over the course of my career. I think you're the only town that has an insurance committee, such as you have, that meets on a regular basis. Very knowledgeable group of people. Everybody asks terrific questions, and really just the committee stays on top of what's going on in the market. So I just have to commend the committee and the town for doing that. So getting back to self-insurance, you do have a trust fund and you have a reserve in that trust fund. it lets you weather the storms. So when you build up a surplus in your trust fund, that's money that is being held on to by the town of Duxbury, which is basically your taxpayers, right? If you were fully insured, that money would be sitting with the health insurance company, right? There are a lot of communities, I shouldn't say a lot, there are communities who have entered into self-insured arrangements and they just don't manage the trust fund well. So they get down to a level where there are very little reserves, which means not only do they have to project rates to cover their costs, they have to project rates to cover costs that may be unexpected, plus the future liability, which is called incurred but not reported. Because of what's happening in the marketplace and because costs are getting so extraordinarily high, we are cautioning our clients to be as conservative as possible in setting your rates, because this year is not a one-off by any stretch. We expect, for all the reasons that Daniel went over, we are expecting to continue to see these increased costs for at least the next several years. So that's why we have been cautioning our clients to be conservative. We had gone back to Blue Cross to get rates as a comparison if you were fully insured. Right now, being self-insured, basically Duxbury takes the risk of your health insurance claims. You purchase stop-loss insurance to protect the trust from large losses. But other than that, the town is at risk for those costs. If you're fully insured, the carriers take the risks. And then there are other charges that are built in. There are premium taxes, there are risk factors, there are fudge factors, whatever you want to call them. When we went to Blue Cross to ask what the rates would look like if in fact you were fully insured, for FY26, they would be 11% higher than what you're looking at under a self-insured basis. Right. So we had to do the due diligence. Obviously, it's something to take a look at every year, periodically, what have you. But it does show that the town is doing better by being self-insured. Then the question has come up, what if the town did something like go into the group insurance commission? Again, that's the state health plan for state employees, but municipalities are allowed to join that plan as well. Right now, I think there's 40 or 45 municipal entities that are in the group insurance commission. For some towns, and we happen to have about 10 to 12 clients that actually have their health plan through the GIC. Why did they go into the GIC? Because there was a cost savings. So we took a look, does it make sense for Duxbury to go into the GIC? What's difficult I can't come to you tonight and give you an exact savings or cost, because there are 8 different plans for the active and non-Medicare eligible employees, and there are 4 Medicare plans. So when a community goes into the GIC, they have the opportunity, each person has the opportunity to select which plan they want to go into. So we don't truly know the total cost until we know what the enrollments look like. For the presentation, I did a conservative estimate and a less conservative estimate. So in my conservative estimate, I put people into what's called the Harvard Pilgrim Explorer plan. It's probably the most comparable plan to what you offer through Blue Cross as far as the network, as far as people knowing who the carrier is, but it's also one of the more expensive plans. In that scenario, comparing what that budget would be for FY26 to what your budget will be using a 9% rate increase, it would have cost the town, not including the employees' portion, an additional $1.9 million. So then I decided to do a less conservative approach and use one of the plans. The carrier is not well known. It's a carrier called WellPoint, used to be called Unicare, that predominantly is for the GIC. So I used a PPO type plan that was less costly than that Harvard plan. Even in that scenario, the cost to the town would have been an additional increase of just under $800,000. And then finally, we looked at the Mayflower Municipal Health Group. And by the way, the GIC and Mayflower, at this point, you could not get into either of those plans for July 1st, but this is assuming that you could. Looking at the Mayflower plan, which is another consortium in Plymouth County, they offer plans through both Blue Cross and Harvard Pilgrim. Looking at comparable plans to what you offer, that increased cost would have been just under $1.4 million. And then the other consortium, Maya, that we talked about, we don't have costs for that plan. They offer Blue Cross plans themselves, but you would be individually rated if you went into Maya. So we actually don't have that cost information.
Okay.
I think we covered it. I guess now we can just answer any
Yeah,
questions
great.
you might
I
have.
believe, Mike, you have a question?
So I'm looking at that chart with the 6%, or no, the chart before, the one where it said 6.75% increase with Mayflower and the 9% for the town of Duxbury. But then you talk about the increased cost of entering into those plans, what the town's cost would be under these examples. Why the difference there? Is it because different towns have different cost shares that are in the Mayflower?
Yeah, so this is based on the full rate. It's not broken out. Yes,
Right.
each town that goes into the Mayflower group or each community who goes into the GIC, they can set their own contribution split.
Right.
But it depends on, all rates are driven by claims.
Correct.
So it depends on the plan design. It depends on the severity of the claims, how many large losses they have, how many people have chronic conditions, what's their mix of high-cost specialty drugs. So there's a lot of different factors. But just to boil it down to be as simple as possible, rates are based on claims. So Duxbury, again, because you're self-insured
Right.
and because you have been fiscally prudent in managing the trust fund, you have been able to have, I think in the past you had some premium holidays.
That was in the Wayback Machine.
Way back. You have the opportunity to use some of the trust fund reserve to draw down rate increases.
And we've changed the plan design.
And you have changed the plan design too, right, which results in lower costs.
The other,
Sorry, I just wanted to add as well that in the Mayflower Municipal Healthcare example, they are also self-insured. So the same types of decisions that the town is making to draw down and use trust money to subsidize those rates, it's happening at the Mayflower Group except for a large pool. So it's very similar decision-making in that example.
And one other, we're just going to keep bouncing back and forth, but one other point, when you go into Mayflower, as Danielle said, the rates that they have set for this year, they're subsidizing those rates with some of their trust fund reserve. When a new group goes in, they don't get the benefit of the surplus in the trust fund, so there's actually a buy-in to get into the Mayflower group. So the projected cost that I had given you of $1.4 million, that doesn't even include what the buy-in cost would be on top of that.
I have a self-insured question here. The storm is I think I read an MMA article that talked about rising increases into 2032 or something like that too. But where we're self-insured, have you seen other towns that or any of your clients adjusting deductibles at all? Is is that a flexibility? Because there's not, I haven't read anything in here about the deductible amounts to reduce
Sure.
the liability to the trust.
So in the municipal world, municipal health insurance is governed by Mass General Law, Chapter 32B. In 2012, a new portion, 3 sections, were introduced into the statute, sections 21 through 23, that allows municipalities to negotiate as a coalition with the employees, called the Public Employee Committee. Prior to that, really your only option was to negotiate under traditional bargaining of 150E, where you'd have to go to each individual union and bargain. When the statute was introduced, the plans that you can negotiate are up to the cost-sharing components of what's considered the GIC benchmark plan, which is just the plan within the GIC that's the most highly subscribed. Excuse me, it happens to be the Harvard Pilgrim Explorer plan. Under sections 21 through 23, you can negotiate up to those levels of copays and deductibles. You're pretty much there. The town of Duxbury is pretty much there. I know when you compare things to the private sector, when you compare your
I'm a
copays
public
and
employee,
deductibles.
so.
What was that?
I'm a public employee. I'm under the GIC. So.
Yeah, oh, okay, all right. But I know when people see these benefits and they compare it to the private sector,
Sure.
they're two totally different animals.
I understand that. Yeah.
And can I just add something?
So as soon as that law changed in 2012, the town of Duxbury called a meeting with the Public Employee Committee, and we changed our plan design. And then we did it again in 2017. So we're constantly evaluating the marketplace and what our competitive set communities are doing. So we're exactly where we should be in terms of cost share, out-of-pocket expenses, and co-payments in terms of being both competitive and fiscally responsible.
Thank you.
I would just add one more advantage to keep in mind with self-insurance. And Jeannie mentioned a couple of the programs that we're focused on, such as emergency room visits and so forth in her presentation. The advantage of being on your own is that we have access to the town's claims utilization, including pharmacy. And the world of healthcare, as I mentioned, is evolving rapidly with all different kinds of what they call point solutions now that address different chronic conditions, different pharmacy utilization, different pharmacy funding arrangements, and the advantage that the town has on its own is that they can do that on their own, and we can look at different innovations going forward. Whereas opposed to if the town were to partake in one of these group purchasers, these decisions are made for the broader pool, and you're not necessarily able to focus on your own population. So while I appreciate the question about the deductible and plan design, because that may be part of the narrative for many communities going forward, as there won't be one silver bullet to fix this, but the advantage that Duxbury has over many other communities is having this access to its own data and to be able to instill programs that could help get to those root causes of costs rising in terms of utilization going forward.
Just to follow up on that, so the GIC is, I think, 500, 1,000, 500 individual, 1,000 for deductibles. What is ours?
Same.
Oh, okay. It wasn't.
We mirror the GIC.
Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe a question, maybe Jeannie can answer this question, but we obviously made a decision at some point in time to be self-insured, which, based on the conversation this evening, seems to be a really good decision, right? So how long have we been, have we always been self-insured, or was this an action that we took many years ago to protect and help minimize costs for employees and retirees?
Good question. I was hired in 2008, and we had just had a very dark time right before that with our self-insured health insurance, and we learned from that. So that happened. I was doing some research when I was interviewing around that, and I think it was 2006 that happened, and that's when the town decided to enact Chapter 32B, Section 19, I think, and that's when we initiated the requirement that retirees enroll in Medicare Part A and Part B. And by doing so, we shifted 80% of the health insurance cost to the federal government so that we were left paying 20%. So that was a big turning point for the town. So we were self-insured before that.
Before
for how
that.
long, I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Good.
I have no further questions. Mike?
I am content.
Thank
Thank you very much. This is an
happy
excellent
Mike.
presentation.
Yes, it was. And it's really good to hear that by being self-insured gives us a flexibility, and also, more importantly, looks like minimizes cost to the town, the taxpayers, and also provides the benefits that our employees and retirees are looking for. So win-win all around.
Right, like just to summarize, I think, the big takeaway here is we're taking really good care of our employees,
Yep.
and we're doing it in a fiscally responsible way.
Thank you.
Would you like a
Is
motion?
everybody ready for a motion?
We are,
Why don't you, I can do it. I'll do
oh,
it.
I can,
I didn't want to steal Cindy's thunder.
my thunder?
Yeah.
I move that the Select Board accept the proposed group health, life, and dental insurance rates effective June 1, 2025 as presented.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. All right. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to the bullpen.
Thanks, Jeannie. Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Danielle. Thank you.
Very much.
That is the worst seat in the house.
It really is.
Terrible.
For a whole year, I'm going to be over here.
Thank you, Fernando. Next is a discussion regarding the fiscal year '26 budget. Who would like to lead us in this discussion? Rainey
Go ahead, Fernando.
or Fernando?
You want me? I'll go. Go ahead. I'll go. Thank you. All right.
Hold on a second. What are you going to say?
What are you going to say?
Well,
You won't know until he
no,
says
actually,
it.
I'll just kick it off, right? I will.
Yeah, sure, go
right
ahead.
ahead.
I
Is
don't
that
mind at
okay?
all.
Please.
Fire away.
All right. So, in essence, actually, no, something? Let me see here.
Pull up 6 pages of notes
No, actually, the town has voted. It's quite clear. At the annual town meeting, the 5A budget, the balanced budget was approved. And thereafter, the 5B, the override budget was approved at the annual town meeting. But at the ballot, it was rejected. So here we are. The approved budget for the town is Article 5A. And that's it, as far as I'm concerned. I don't see any point in any further discussion. The town has voted. The town has said 5A it is. That's quite simply where I stand.
I got a little more to say.
Yeah, well, I agree with you,
That was a bit,
Fernando.
It was perfect
that
intro.
was a bit blunt, but it is what the town has voted.
No, I agree with you. The purpose isn't to revote 5A. I think that, to your point, the town has made a decision. We will respect that decision. Mike, did you have something?
No,
I see this
Rainey speak, yeah.
more as a postmortem
Yeah.
of the exercise. How can we do it better next year? Are the things we learned this year that we can avoid next time around?
Well, I can add to that.
Well,
I can as well.
maybe Rainey first, and then,
Yeah, I just want to kind of give you an update as to where we are over the last week or so. So, excuse me, as I mentioned last week, the approved 5A budget includes reductions in force in the following general government departments: accounting, assessing, DPW, municipal services, select board's office, fire, and police. 13 positions in total on the town side. Prior to my budget submittal to the board on December 9th, we met with all the department heads, the employees, and/or the union representatives who could potentially be adversely impacted by the possible failure of the proposed override to notify them of the situation. At that time, the positions being contemplated for reductions in force, with the exception of 4 of the 5 positions in the DPW, were all held by active employees. As a result of the override not passing, the total number of positions reduced, and that will not be funded in FY26 remains unchanged at 13 on the town side. In some cases, attrition, such as retirements and resignations, will create those vacancies and preclude the need to actually terminate employees in the fire and police departments. but the net result of 2 vacancies in each of those departments as of July 1st will be the same and is unchanged from my December budget message. The budgeted fire department firefighter staffing level as of today is 28. As of July 1st, it will be 26. The budgeted police department officer staffing level as of today is 35. The budgeted police department staffing level as of July 1st will be 33. As I noted, 4 of the 5 positions selected for RIFs in the DPW were vacant, and as a result of the override not passing, those 4 positions will not be filled. However, 1 administrative staff position will be reduced. Last week and this week, we have been working on our operations plan under the 5A budget, and we will be prepared for July 1st when it arrives. There will be changes, and as the weeks go on, I'll be expanding upon that. But I want to make very clear, especially to the people that I know are watching right now on social media, no one lied to anybody. We told you that there would be reductions in force, and they have happened, and they are happening. The difference is whether we have to pay the employees unemployment by way of a layoff or if they've decided to resign or retire, but nobody lied. Any questions?
Any comments? Fernell?
Yeah, do you want to, going forward, right, it is going to be one of my goals in the next conversation, but it's the whole budget process. I think reflecting on what happened for this fiscal year 26 budget, I feel that it would be good for the select board to actually own the budget, to recommend the budget. So I think we need to build, or we need to take a look at the way we have been doing the budget historically, and look at a point where the select board interjects or plays a role. Thinking of where the town departments and school departments develop their budget after a message being sent out, and we still have that joint meeting. But at some point, then those town departments, school departments come before the select board. We have a conversation, we debate it, and at the end of the day, the select board recommend a budget. Then that goes to the finance committee. That goes to fiscal advisory committee to go ahead and then do their work, which have they done historically. So I think it's really key is what I'm looking for is that select board owns the budget. They roll up their sleeves, understand the drivers of it, understand the decisions being made and the recommendations being made by the town departments, and then actually vote on it. And whether it's unanimous or a majority vote, it is our recommended budget. And then thereafter, like I said, the Finance Committee and the Fiscal Advisory Committee go ahead and roll up their sleeves and analyze it. They may come up with a different answer. They may make changes, but that's their role. And so that's what I'm thinking that we need to do going forward for fiscal year 27. We need to do something different.
Mike?
I agree with your premise. I would suggest also that the Finance Committee has a parallel role here. They present a budget to town meeting, and the important work they do from September onwards, twice a week, 3 hours, meeting with department heads. That's important work that we don't do, and that has a value to this town. As you know, you were on the Finance Committee. Yeah. One thought I had, because you brought this up last week about the Town Manager Act, but as far as owning and having an input into the town manager's budget, one idea I had for one of my goals, and or just that I would, is to ask the town manager to present a first draft of the fiscal year 27 budget and any requested contingency budget before a certain date, and to solicit select board feedback. We still have the opportunity to attend Finance Committee meetings if we want to hear, and we could request certain groups come before the select board that have bigger asks. But my idea here, based upon what Fernando had said last time, is that Rainey can get some feedback from us before his deadline in December, and go back and either make edits or whatever. But it's just a thought to create that space that we'd have an opportunity to see what the budget's looking like and provide some feedback. I think what we did last year with having discussions during the summer about the budget message early on were important. I think that we can maintain that. But as far as getting the budget, I think that December timeline is really hard because all of a sudden we jump right into the holidays and then we're on a rocket ship to town meeting.
Yeah.
And it's so, if there was a way, and I didn't, I'm interested in Rainey's opinion on this too, because he's the one that, but this year in particular, we've had a lot of information. People generally know where they're going with their budgets or want to go with their budgets. And I'm hopeful that that wouldn't be something that would be impractical. But I know that you have other deadlines, so I'll let you.
Yeah, maybe we could build on your comment around timeline. Another item that I'm.
Hold just one sec, sorry. We have Amy and then Fernando.
Okay, sorry.
Ownership is a big word, and I've sat in many years on the Finance Committee meetings, and I agree that we need to have initial input. We need to have part ownership. I'm not sure full ownership. I don't speak fluent financial. We all know this by now, and I'm not looking to do that. I think it's a joint effort. What I think, for me, the biggest takeaway is trying to build a process that provides the residents with the comfort. And I know we've all been trying to do that. You guys do that every time you meet, I know. But somehow, I hear the residents, they spoke. I'm not looking to undermine or try to undo anything that they've voted on. But I would like to try to create a process that they can buy into and trust. And I went back years ago in 2020 when a group of the Finance Committee participated in I think it was the MIAA Best Budget Practices. You guys reviewed the Northborough model, which continues to be an award-winning budget process and a model that is out there. I think I've sent the link to some of my fellow board members. It talks specifically about how to build consensus in the town and the buy-in from everybody right down to the residents. So when the committees, the groups, the boards, have these policies all put in place, how much of just policies for every contingency. And everybody knows those policies, so when the town is in a fiscal crisis or something comes up or there is a real level of transparency, of understanding, and of buy-in. And so I'm happy that we're having this conversation. I really think that it's time to regroup, rethink, and make some changes in the right direction. I mean, town meeting has spoken.
Fernando.
Building on that, I'm just looking at Northborough, right? You talked about time and you talked about engagement. We're one of the few communities that have our annual town meeting so early. All right. Full transparency, I did put together a citizens petition 2016 to try and change the date of the annual town meeting. So I did some research, and the point at that time was to try and increase attendance at the annual town meeting. But in conversations since then, it really, by moving it to the hope maybe May, that could be the possible suggestion. It does give the town more time to go ahead and develop the budget. It will give us more time to actually communicate and engage the community. We do it in such a fast, we do it so quickly.
holidays are in
and
there.
over the holidays. So maybe there's another option. One of the goals that we can look at is, I'm opening it up for debate here, but one of the goals would be to actually look at what we can do to change the date of the town meeting to give us more time to be able to go through the budget process, but more importantly, to give time for us to engage with and communicate with the residents. I think that's what one of the things that we went through this year. One of my learnings is that I think we tried hard to communicate, but there was a lot of other communication ongoing as well, right? And we weren't able to maybe fully devote our time and efforts to kind of engaging the community in a different way, looking at different models that we could do, not just the forums. They were attended, but not attended with a greater audience that, say, social media gets in. So I think we need to debate how we communicate and how we engage, but would certainly, by expanding, by giving us more time, we could actually focus our efforts in doing that and getting the support of the residents. It feels like annual town meeting. It's basically, yeah, it's. I remember, so Amy, you're the only. It used to be the old Toby Gardens. You're the only person asking questions, right, at the annual town meeting. And I think, it'd be great if more people would be able to participate and more people would be able to ask questions and understand the budget process and the drivers of the budget.
Any other comments regarding the fiscal
Just to follow up,
26?
Just to clarify, my thought wasn't time for public participation. Yourself and others gave a ton of time, and I think your idea is good. What I am focusing on is our participation in Rainey's budget.
Right.
We receive it. We certainly have our input, but it seems like it's done.
The cake is baked.
And that
It should be unbaked. We should have the opportunity to.
We should
to-
look
at
at the
least a little
recipe.
bit,
We
yes.
need
You
to
know.
be able to
Exactly.
look at the recipe
recipe.
that's going into the
Correct.
cake.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. I think that when we get it, as you say, it's sort of a done deal at that point. And I look at what the vote was this year. I don't think anybody voted in favor of 5A, that anybody thought that was the best budget that we could put together. People voted against the override. But I'm just wondering if there was if we had had some input, if we had had a conversation, and no information really went out about that. And then, of course, somebody just mentioned social media. Social media, I don't know what to do about that, but there's so much misinformation that was rampant, just rampant.
I think we
But
need to figure out a way.
I would like I agree with you, Fernando. I
Yeah.
would like a more input in maybe talking directly here to some of the department heads and
Right.
getting their philosophies, their wishes, their thoughts, and it's hard to be in a meeting here and then 2 more meetings, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I mean,
right.
there's just so much, that any of us can
Can I
do,
add
so.
one thing to what you're saying? Because I think with that, looking at the recipe, the ingredients that are going into the recipe before we get a baked cake needs to be based on priorities. And,
Correct.
I tried to say this, I was the lone voice up here. It was kind of a lonely budget season up here for me. But I really felt that our priorities were not reflected in the 5A budget. And I was so concerned that at the end of the day, we would be left with that budget and have the residents, in fear that, we didn't have my priorities being public health and safety. And, that, we have always ensured that, we would not jeopardize that, but that 5A budget was horrific, and here we are. So I think as we move forward, we need to avoid that at all costs, because you don't want to end up with something at the end of the day that was a gamble, and it wasn't a good gamble.
I think looking at the recipe, I'm not saying that's the last thing. We want to double the work that the town department, that the school and town department heads do in coming to the finance committee. They get a really good scrub at that process. But there's got to be a way when we look at the budget, essentially we are the town. We are a service organization, and so the vast majority of our costs associated with people. I'm sure with getting together with Mary McKinnon and with the department heads, we could actually summarize. At the end of the day, if you have the same amount of people from one budget to year, say you have 30 employees in your organization, and you have 30 employees for the fiscal year, then any changes in the salary is due to either contracts or Article 4, and then basically, if you look at their expenses, then you could look at what are the big changes. And so I think we can get enough information in an efficient manner, an effective manner, without adding too much to the workload, such that we can see where the cake is looking like, and we can be efficient with our time, but also efficient with the time of our department heads.
Randy, what are your thoughts on timeline and things like that?
For,
My suggestion or Fernando's suggestion.
oh, it's
about-
something
My
I'd have to look
suggestion
at.
about a first draft or his suggestion about extending, like moving out the.
I'd have to look at it with the calendar, figure out dates, points of when information gets shared, something I'd work through with Mary, the department heads. By the way, I have your goals. Are we on the goals now, or are we on the
We're
budget?
about to get there. I want to hear from
Okay.
Betsy, and then we'll move on.
Okay, because these are Mike's goals. I'm just going to pass them out.
Yep.
Yep.
Hi, thank you, Brian. One thing is that it would be impossible to change, or not impossible, nothing's impossible. It would be very difficult to change the date before next year's town meeting.
Correct.
As the date needs to be changed at annual town meeting.
Correct.
So you're talking FY '28, not '7. The charge has been, and it has morphed over the years. Being around longer than dirt, I've seen it kind of progress. And years ago, the select board did hear from the department heads in the major departments while we were working on the budget. It has been in the last few years that this board and the board previous to it did tune into Finance Committee to listen in, but so I take a certain amount of exception to not understanding how the recipe went, because as a Finance Committee meets twice a week and beats it to death from September on, and you are all welcome. Susanna and the team at the Clipper cover it. So the information is there. I think one of the biggest was difficulties this year. We did more, I think, this year than we've done in memory, trying to convey to the public what we were doing. But social media and a small segment of very negative people would basically charge that we were making it up. And we didn't answer them. We need to answer them. We need to not challenge them, not attack them, because I refuse to participate on that level, but correct. Because if these falsehoods or misinterpretations, I think that today at town meeting, someone had published something on Facebook
Town
that
hall,
caused
yeah.
a landslide down at town hall about your water rate changes. It wasn't, it wasn't challenged. And if someone puts false information out there, perhaps best intentioned, perhaps just to stir the pot, I don't know, but it's taken as fact. We need to develop a change. It was funny when you were talking about DEI and you were reading that. I sat on my hands because I didn't want to be a total pain in the neck tonight. But I would suggest that when you read through that again, that you add 2 words, live and work, because the people that work here are not having a fair shake from this community by a very small member of very negative participants. And it stands. We allow it to stand. And we allow it to stand for the volunteers. We allow it to stand for Rainey, for Jeannie, for every other department head that's in this room. They're called crybabies. They're called this for just coming up, getting out of bed in the morning and coming to do their job. And if that is allowed to stand, all of the information or debate or good information that is shared, it doesn't matter. Or it doesn't matter because it seems in this climate, in this political climate that we are unfortunately in, believing the worst about people that have dedicated their time and efforts to public service seems to be a blood sport that we enjoy. I don't think that many people at Town Hall are enjoying that right now. So I would ask that when you look at that, the DEI proclamation, add words "and work," because they deserve our protection. You deserve to participate. Our doors are always open for you to come to Finance Committee, but we will not wait for you to do your work before we start ours. Fernando knows this, and I know he didn't mean that, but I just wanted to reiterate that. We start our work in September and October, and we will continue to do our work to come up with our recommendations for the town. But, you know, it is what it is, and I think that my mother always said that if you argue with certain people, then you prove that you're working with their talent base. I don't believe that to be true, but I don't think that we should let falsehoods stand. And somehow or another, we have to come up with a mechanism that, in a dignified and reasonable way, that we can correct some of the things that are published that are not true and are unfair to the fine people that work here.
How would
Thank you,
you,
Fred.
I have a question for you, Betsy. How would you got to go back there.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
How would you suggest we do that? I mean, I
An
am,
ombudsman, perhaps. Unfortunately, I mean, we rail against the fact that it is an internet world, and social media seems to be able to say whatever they want to say with no repercussions.
Right.
And I'm certainly not going to deny free speech to anyone. But if they are making things up or misunderstanding either through a deliberate stir-the-pot mentality or just because they misunderstood, it needs to stand corrected. An ombudsman, but trust me, I am not suggesting that Rainey is the ombudsman. He has 17 direct reports, and he doesn't need to be challenged with copying, checking out Facebook today.
Right.
But there were so many wild things that were said during the course of the override discussion that went unchallenged because either we're too polite or we didn't have the mechanism to correct. And I think that was, in my mind, one of the, I was standing in front of the voting, the ballot, and I had an opportunity to talk to a lot of people. And some of the misunderstanding that even on election day that was coming forward was head scratching.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just, and I do follow a lot of that on Facebook, but it just seems somehow inappropriate to get into.
I get it.
It's so frustrating.
Well, but I don't think you get down into the dirt and argue it.
No.
But when falsehoods are spoken, then a correction that is not on the website or whatever, no ombudsman. I think that one of the things that this board could do is to stand up for their employees that are being raked through the dirt. I don't think that that's fair. I think things that have been said are atrocious. Our silence is thundering in my ears.
Yeah.
So, but I'm repeating myself, and I apologize. But I do, an ombudsman somewhere that these are addressed, that people can reasonably understand, that they can go to our website and find the question and the answer. So, I don't know.
Good. Fred.
Thank you. Fred Weiler, Vice Chairman of the Finance Committee. Listening to the discussion tonight has brought up a whole bunch of issues, and it's going to be difficult for me to want to comment to as many of those as I'd like to at this time, but I want to try to keep my points to three particular topics. One, I am disappointed that you're not going to look at the 2A budget, 5A budget, excuse me. I think there are ways that we could address some of those layoffs, and avoid some of the bloodletting that's going to happen in our town hall and our various other departments. It doesn't require another override vote. Good people can get together and make good decisions about where we can come up with resources to do it. I would offer, just for the sake of conversation, we have a stabilization fund with over $8 million in it, a rainy day fund, as we like to call it. Well, it's raining out. And I think those people deserve our consideration of doing that between now and the upcoming special town meeting in June. It doesn't require an override, but what you do need to do is it requires a 2/3 vote. So it wouldn't be, people could argue that, oh, you're going to stack the meeting and, oh, we can do this. But it's a possibility to consider saving some of those jobs. Now, we don't have to save all of them. We knew that the budget shortfall for the budget was $1.7 million. We don't have to spend that much money, I think, to solve the problem, but we should put our heads together to find a way to address it. I'll just leave it for then, and I'll talk more about it at the Finance Committee. Second of all, when you talk about taking ownership of the budget, I am a firm believer in the Strong Manager Act. I know there's some resentment to that today, but I remember before we had it, and before we had a town manager, and it was designed so we could bring professionalism to our process. And it wasn't any insult to the existing city members. Some of those were me in those days, so I'd take no umbrage at it. I think it was a good move. I think what your role is primarily is financial advisory. You set the standards, you set the tone, you tell the town manager what are the parameters in which he can build his budget. He builds the budget. He has to go into all those expense lines and figure out how much postage this department needs. What do they need for janitorial services? You don't want to get into that. That's up to the town manager. He then brings it to you for your approval. And we also get it as well. And what we've done over the last as many years as I've been involved is we kind of come to a consensus. So we go to town meeting and we're all on the same page. So the voters know that the people they've elected and appointed are standing there, have gone through all these numbers, and they can take some comfort in them. And I think that's something that works. It's worked in the past. I don't see a reason why it can't work now. I don't think you don't understand. In my opinion, you do own this budget, whether you like it or not. You're our select board, and you're responsible for everything that happens at town meeting, whether you think you are or you're not. You are. Everybody knows it up there. The way the tradition has been, the Finance Committee presents the budget to town meeting. It's our job to sort of second-guess your budget so that we are giving it a second look, and so that the town meeting can feel comfortable that it's not just all of us cooking the pie and saying, here it is, folks. We're just pulling a little wool over your eyes or something. But no, you come up with a budget, we second guess it, we go back and forth. We're never in agreement on everything, and we try to come up with a consensus. And that's been the way it's been for a number of years. But I do think we really are in a position where we can take a look at that 5A budget, and we can try to do something between now and the special. And I think the last thing I want to mention, we haven't solved any of our financial problems with that vote.
Correct.
We've left ourselves in the same stew we were in when the whole budget process started. We're going to have a deficit budget for 2027. And we're going to be looking at it whether or not we're going to do an override. Yeah. But I think if we can start the process now by addressing some of these layoff issues, and then we can go back knowing that we reached too far with the last override, plain and simple. We asked for too much. It wasn't that we were greedy. It's just that that's what we thought the town needed.
Right.
But clearly, the citizens didn't agree. And you can argue about why they didn't vote for or why they did, but I think the reality is they didn't. And so we have to go back to square one, but we have to be prepared to confront the same financial crisis starting in September 1st when we start looking at next year's budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Just want to correct something, friend. In the Town Manager Act, it does say quite clearly that the Select Board recommends the budget before it goes to the Finance Committee and the Fiscal Advisory Committee. So that somewhere or another, we've got to be able to look at it. Look at it and recommend it before it goes. So that's what we need to find a way to get that done. It obviously was done many years ago, as Betsy alluded, and somehow or another it disappeared, that step. But that step has to, looking back at what happened, anyway, that's history. We've got to look forward to we can't see, yeah. So I think it's, anyway, I feel personally very strongly about that. And I'm happy to roll up my sleeves and work to figure out a way to get that done. And I think it's important with respect to ownership. I would really, we'll debate it, but I would like to see a vote of this select board on the recommended budget before it goes to the Finance Committee and the Fiscal Advisory Committee. That's. We can discuss process. We can debate it. We're not hearing it tonight. We're not going to solve it tonight, but certainly let's start having the conversation and let's see where we get to.
Just the stabilization fund, that was a point I brought up when the Sustainable Task Force came in and talked about revenues. And I was unequivocally told that we could we should not, there was a little bit of that, but I was told we could not use stabilization funds pretty directly, I believe from Mary, maybe from Betsy as well, for this purposes. I brought up that we never touched them during COVID,
right,
when it was, the sky was falling. And I talked about inflation as a basis for it. I was unequivocally told no. So I think we just, if that's something that needs to be revisited, I would like to know why I was told no back then.
We have fiscal, if you look on the website, under the Finance Committee, we have guidelines.
I read those.
And it has never been our practice to use the savings account to pay for reoccurring costs.
Correct.
And I think that's what you were hearing, is that using stabilization funds to pay for operating or reoccurring costs or labor is a way to deplete your savings until it's gone. And so it has always, and we didn't get a AAA rating by doing things like that. Now, this is an extraordinary circumstance, and friend and I have a friendly disagreement on the use of stabilization in this regard, and that's okay. But that is what you were hearing, is that we do not use our savings. It would be like if you had,
I get it.
$1,000 in your savings account, you lost your job, and once you spend that $1,000, you're done.
Yeah,
I get it.
Matt, do you have something?
Bless you.
Sorry? Yeah.
Would you like to speak? Go right ahead.
Sorry. Tall. Hi, Matt Gambino, Mayflower Street. I would recommend, I think Brian actually said something that was important, the language that you used. It wasn't on the agenda, but you said postmortem. Your intent was for this to be a postmortem. My recommendation would be that the Select Board figures out a way to get itself and some other committees in this town together to do a rigorous postmortem of this budget season, because we're kind of coming up sort of from the hip with things that we like, we didn't like, but there are some things that Amy's even saying, the process needs to be, I've been frustrated with the process. The process is a problem. I agree. I think the process is a problem, not just with the budget, but all of the ancillary things that go around it. The communication strategy, the timeliness with which information gets put out to the public. My own opinion is that there was just a lot of scrambling with this budget. It was handled in a very reactive way. I mean, without getting too much into the weeds with it, there's been some talk about the town manager presenting a budget to the Select Board and the Select Board not owning that budget. I mean, I've read the bylaws. The way I interpret it is that the Select Board does have some sort of critical ownership into that first budget that's presented. And it was presented on December 9th, but I don't remember any Select Board member saying that it was horrific on December 9th. I don't remember any Select Board saying that, I didn't hear any Select Board member saying it was horrific until last month. You know what I mean? Betsy talked about, misinformation coming out and disrespect on social media. She's right about that. But in November, people were asking me, well, how do we defeat what's going on social media? I was like, well, get your stuff out on the website. Well, we can't do that. We can't hire a website person to put stuff up on the website. At the end of the year, the last Select Board meeting before the year, you were frustrated that the real needs budgets, the narrative budgets, the presentations weren't in your hands. But they were presented in October. You didn't have them, but you could have asked for them. So I think there's a lot of reactivity going on. I think there's a lot of, I can understand the frustration, but if you're frustrated, say it when you're frustrated early and start to correct the problem. I think we can avoid the problems next time around by just having a rigorous, objective, self-reflective view on how all of this went. Because I do think there was a lot of scrambling, there was a lot of reactiveness. Things could have been addressed earlier if there had just been a plan put together. It sounds cheesy, but where was the communication plan? What was the communication strategy? There was no communication strategy. You know, at the end of the year, it was like someone lamented on the select board, "Ooh, we've got private people putting websites together and they're beating us." Well, I'm sorry, the people in the town were, you know, interested in getting what they thought was correct information out because they weren't getting it. The way to deal with misinformation is not to create a vacuum. There was a vacuum of information. And that was just one thing. So it's probably going to hurt a little bit, but I would recommend the select board, the finance committee, the school committee, the fiscal advisory committee, and other committees you think would be appropriate need to get together with some sort of objective moderator so that we can really break down this process from soup to nuts and figure out how to get better at it next time and not be so reactive. That's my input.
JR. Good evening. Jack Kent Jr., 1351 Tremont Street. And I have served on, and I am serving on the Finance Committee, but I want to talk now as a citizen of the town of Duxbury. I've been a citizen of the town of Duxbury my entire life. I've enjoyed it, but I'm appalled tonight that the Select Board accepted the vote and said, well, that's it, the people have voted. When we're talking about not replenishing our first responders, being the highway department, police, and fire, when we already knew, perhaps one of the mistakes we made was asking for the additional personnel in the override, but that you can sit there and say, well, they voted, that's it. We have a special town meeting coming up. I believe it's within the law to present a new budget at the special town meeting, and perhaps it could have a piece of the 1.2 override in it and have an election before July 1st. And I'm stunned that you sat there and accepted the vote. Accept the vote, but not without a plan to do nothing about it. Without waiting a year. Thank you.
Can I respond to that comment?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd really like to be able to respond to that comment. To now open 5A and say that, for example, we need to fill the 2 open positions in the fire and police departments and look at other departments, recreation, counseling on aging, library, HR, animal control, schools, to figure out who's going to take the cut to fund the $390,000 to fund the 4 open positions. We can't do that. To go back to the employees and say we're doing this again, to start the stress of uncertainty all over again, not knowing if we have a job in July, we just can't do that. This is disrespectful to the employees and to those who have retired or resigned due to the town's decision. The town and school administration have already gone through the difficult process of identifying where we can reduce the workforce without eliminating the services being provided. You guys, the finance committee went through this, and you explained it to me, the process that you took, and I followed up and spoke to other people. So I'm going to use the example of the decision-making process that you guys used to come up with 5A. The town clerk provides essential legally required services, recording votes, administrating oaths, maintaining records, issuing licenses and certificates, as well as ensuring compliance with laws regarding elections, vital records, and public meetings. There are 2 employees. And this election is a great example why 2 employees are required to ensure business continuity. That's what I heard, business continuity. Susan Kelly was running for re-election, unable to run the election, so Tamara stepped in and provided cover. That's why the town clerk's office was not part of the reduction in force. Business continuity. 1 person. If that person's off, then how do you cover it? So you need 2 people to provide that essential service. The administrative function supporting the select board and town manager, however, has been cut by 50%. In this case, the service can continue to be provided. However, there will be an impact that needs to be managed. I'm not sure if we go through this all over again, department by department, we would come up with a better outcome. You guys worked hard on this, and I followed up. However, what I do know that by reopening 5A, we'll once again be a disruption to our employees and further erode their morale and trust in us. We've heard the town wanted 5A, it's time to move on.
Sorry.
No, I think we've beat this enough, I think. I appreciate it. Why don't we move on now to the select board goals for the upcoming year? We have mics. There's already been a little bit of discussion. Anybody?
And we have last year's too. I mean, I kind of, what I did was tweak last year's. But if there are goals from last year that the board would like to continue with,
one of the things that I was going to suggest, and Mike, I bring this up because you pointed to it, they sort of go hand in hand. One is the full-time planner. I think that's a more than need to have at this point.
It's a prerequisite.
Yeah, but it goes into one of the incomplete goals from last year, which is the implementation of Envision Duxbury, and that was number, what was that last year? That was number 4. So, oh, look at that. It's number 4 on the old list and number 4 on the new list. Kind of go hand in hand. I don't know if those are, I guess those would be separate goals. But one is sort of an event that hire a particular individual. And the other one is an ongoing series of deliverables. Any other thoughts on the planner position and the comprehensive plan?
I broadened it out a little bit. I have comprehensive plan and goals in this area for 2025 should center around continuing the search for the full-time planning director. And even in the absence of that position being filled, the town manager should convene the select board and planning board to discuss the top priorities of the comprehensive plan implementation process, with the planning board setting priority items to discuss. I think it's always good for us to meet with them, and they should, they're driving this bus when it comes to the comprehensive plan. So I think that we should be reactive to their priorities for the comprehensive plan implementation. But full-time planning is climate
I mean, we had 3.
necessary.
And I agree with all of you. And I actually agree with our goals last year that were appropriate. Climate resiliency, Vision Duxbury, and I think there was a third there. They were all planning goals, but we don't have a planner.
Right. I hear you on that. Amy, I would just add to your comment a little bit. When I was on the planning board and we were looking to implement the deliverables of the comprehensive plan, one of the challenges we were having is we were just one department asking the rest of the town to do stuff. So we, meaning planning board, were pushing it up to the select board to say, hey, who has ultimate authority over the rest of the town to make these things happen?
Weren't
So-
things assigned to different?
Yes.
There was like
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yep.
everybody had.
Chris Ryan put
yeah.
together a detailed list.
Assignments,
Yes,
yeah.
but ultimately, it was all answerable to the select board. So I wouldn't want to push that back to the planning board, but I do completely agree, it's the planner who's pretty much running that show in trying to keep the trains moving.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason why because that was one of my goals too, because we spent so much time putting Envision Duxbury together, and so one of my goals was to start that process again, meet with the planning board, have joint meetings. We do have a part-time or interim, full-time.
For a couple more months, a month or 2.
She full-time?
No,
interim.
Yeah, part-time.
Part-time. Planner, and I know that there has been a lot of work having to be done with the MBTA communities thing. But, that's sort of on its last legs in some ways now. I don't see why we couldn't get it going with her.
Because she might be winding down when the MBTA thing winds down, too.
Well, we can do it without her then. I mean, and I as far as hiring a planner, I think it's, a number one overall goal, but I don't know that it's, I mean, I don't even know that it's, I mean, we could put it down here, but that's, hopefully just a check, I mean, it's,
That's an operational deliverable as opposed to a goal of
yeah,
this board.
it seems to me that way. I mean, it's
I'm being blunt.
No,
You're
I hear
being
you.
blunt.
I think we're all.
I mean, I think we're there.
we're very,
Yeah.
it's very important, but, if I can just continue seeing how I'm talking, as far as what Rainey's goal last year of working with the coastal resiliency and alternative energy, we're doing okay with the alternative energy as far as the municipal aggregation, although we're, now waiting for rates. But, coastal resiliency, until we get a planner, I mean, we're going to hopefully come with a proposed statement, but that's for us to adopt. And I think it's crucial for the town, but I don't know without the
Planner.
a planner and without a secondary, a planner, I don't know if that's going to go anywhere. So it's not that I want to take it off, but I don't know that it's a reasonable goal this year.
Amy?
Could I pitch a new goal? And this one is, I've been thinking a lot about this one. It's fairly reactive from what we've all just been going through. I'm not on social media, so I don't know a lot of the misinformation that's out there, but I certainly talk to people. And, I think there's a lot of anger, a lot of mistrust. Again, I'm hoping to try to move forward with that. So I'd like to pitch a goal for Rainey, and I titled it Departmental Equity and Satisfaction. So to promote equitable treatment across all municipal departments, the town manager is tasked with ensuring balance, resource allocation, attention, and support across all departments. I would ask that the town manager develop and implement strategies to ensure, and probably does a lot of this, unbiased decision-making, fostering a collaborative environment where each department feels valued and supported. This should include regular in-person visits to each department with opportunities for employee feedback to address concerns promptly and to connect day to day with the workflow and his employees. And I think I'd like to, have that kind of an ongoing thing. I hear, that you don't often visit the other departments as much as some departments. And I think in an effort to heal and help the community and as a whole, I would ask that we adopt this goal.
Is that something that may be better suited to his performance review? We can have that discussion at that point.
Well,
Just a question.
It could be, but
It could be,
it could
because at
also
the
be a
end-
goal.
Oh,
Again,
yeah. Okay.
Are these our goals or Rainey's
I
goals?
thought
Yours,
these were
this
our-
is for the
these were
board,
our
not me.
goals.
These are yours.
I thought
they're
they
the
were our
goals
the
that we're setting
goals that
for
we
Rainey.
set for him.
So he self-reflects next March.
They're the board
Well,
goals.
the
not our
goals
board.
sift through to,
No,
then
this process was set up so that
These are
Rainey
your goals.
would have the goals from last year.
They're right here. I gave them to you in the packet.
Yeah.
They're your goals.
Jeannie,
Those
can
were
you
last
maybe
year's.
Just clarify that point
Yeah.
for us? I thought these were the select board's goals.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, as I said at the last meeting, so this is an ideal opportunity for the select board to set their own goals.
Right.
And then everyone else's goals can then be related to the select board goals. So these are the goals that we're setting first for the select board.
Well,
So maybe what I could say, how about this, building on that, how about there's something along the lines of address the current challenges. I'm trying to be nice. Maybe we can put more explicit language, but address the current challenges being faced by town employees, board committees, and volunteers, right? And maybe that, and then basically then Rennie can take that piece and look at it, how it impacts town employees and what we can do as that, but kind of recognizing that right now, for a number of reasons, and you know, basically, my sense is that the classification compensation study, that was the right thing to do from a fiscal and a fiduciary point of view, has created some tension in the organization. And then, you know, continuing today, we've received comments and emails addressed to the select board saying, you guys are just staying quiet, and your employees are getting harassed and picked on, right? So there's a number of reasons, both internal and external, with regards to the town, and what can we as a select board do to at least initiate actions. I'm just address the current challenges, right? I'm encompassing that being faced by town employees, town department heads, town employees, boards, committees, and volunteers.
Right, so part of what you're saying, what I'm just saying is that we, you know, if, whether it's our goal or whether it's it's something that we ask Rainey to do, I mean, that is where this trickles down to.
Correct.
I think that is a goal of mine, is to ensure that every department feels valued and every department feels that they're equally valued, and that's important.
Right. But
Can I just jump in for a sec? Because we have Jeannie here with us. Jeannie, can I just inquire of you, put you on the spot? I think what I'm hearing up here, and what I think is a great idea, it's more of an issue of employee engagement type work, and it's important. But how would that be actionable by us? And do we have tools that we currently have or can get that would help us with that? And I don't necessarily mean like surveys and that sort of stuff, although unless you think that's useful, but it's more about how we can make actionable the sentiment that you're hearing from here.
It's the first time I'm hearing it. So we just, as a matter of course, we do exit interviews. So we do have, I think it's a challenge because, just if I can speak from a workplace perspective, all workplace issues are addressed and handled. Not all workplace issues can be, the results cannot always be shared. So what people think should happen can't always happen. And what people think should happen often does happen. But I can't report that out. So I think a lot of it is perception. But perception is reality. And that's, I'm not hearing a lot of the sentiment that I'm hearing Amy talk about. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a way to get to that. No workplace is perfect. No employee is perfect. I was thinking that we could do like a workplace environment survey. And that's not what you suggested, but I don't know how else to, and of course employee engagement is important. And we do that through the classification and compensation study, and we do it through benefits and making sure that we're providing what the employees need and what we've heard from employees, so we're delivering on that. So I'd have to think about it off the top of my head. That's my comment, how to make this actionable.
I think you're hearing from us what we want to support.
Yes.
The employees, they're valued, and we certainly don't want to wait till an exit interview.
No.
We want folks to be engaged and maybe even excited, not skipping to work necessarily, but happy to be here, and because we have great benefits. I think generally we have a great work environment. We're at a low point right now. I appreciate that. But if we, as a select board, were to adopt as one of our goals that then cascades down to the rest of the organization, make things better, for lack of a better term, is that realistic and actionable by the time it gets down to the next level?
And as I was thinking about this meeting, and Betsy alluded to this too. I mean, I think the first sentence of the diversity, equity, and inclusion statement states that the Duxbury Select Board is committed to ensuring that our town and workplace is a safe and welcoming community that embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think that is something that the board has already, because community is both the town and the workplace. So I do think that the workplace is moving in the direction of a community. A lot of people refer to a workplace as a family. Families have their issues. I think community is a better way to go about it. So, I mean, that's an overarching theme that the select board has already endorsed, and it's never been more important than it is now. So that could be the framework for some kind of a goal.
Right. I mean, it would be good to, the suggestion is there for you, Jeannie, to go away and think about this, and you've heard from the board, and what actions can we take as a select board to understand, right? To verify, to understand, what is the problem? Is there a problem?
Yeah.
And then what actions then we can take to,
Yes.
through the town manager or through the select board, whatever, right? That to address the issue. We need to establish what it is, right? So.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I, go ahead.
I just want, if I could just take a liberty and Town Clerk Kelly, I'm going to put you on the spot just for a moment here, because you're the only elected person who's actually a full-time employee. Could I impose upon you to maybe, do you have any thoughts as to, and I know you don't report to us, but you're in the workplace day in, day out. You're kind of, the town clerk is the hub of activity, typically in any community. Would you have any thoughts for us as we're trying to formulate and put our arms around improving the workplace?
Hearing Amy said that she would be interested in a survey, I think that could be useful, depending on the questions you're asking. There are a lot of people who, if they're unhappy with something, don't necessarily go to the places that they should be going to talk about it because they don't feel supported. So I had talked to Amy about this previously, and it came up, being the only elected person, I'm happy to be a drop-off point if a survey was something that you were interested in doing.
We talked a little last year about doing that blind survey, the employee survey that would.
A confidential survey, so that if it
wouldn't
came
go-
to me,
Right, it would need to go, be brought back and compiled by someone other than,
Yeah.
town management.
Yeah, usually you'd have an outside vendor
if
that
we
does
didn't
that,
do it
collects it.
outside
And yeah.
for saving money, but
Okay. But would you see that as something that could be useful? Yeah.
I would,
Okay.
I would.
So what do we think up here in terms of that being a goal of this board? And I'm not sure I've quite articulated it yet in terms of what we're writing down as the goal.
Right, but you're saying a goal is an upward feedback survey?
No.
No.
I think it could be part of that.
Yeah.
Again, it would be part of
Yeah,
it.
Isn't the goal, I mean,
The goal is,
the goal
What-
could
what's
be
the goal?
the first sentence that,
Yes.
the Duxbury Select Board is committed to ensuring that our town and our workplace is a safe and welcoming community that embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right. And so what are the actions then that result from that? Right, okay.
Right, because I don't know that that's not necessarily a yearly goal. We've embraced that as something we do always.
Right, but
Right, so what,
identified it this year as something that you want. That might be
yeah,
an
I
issue.
was kind
That
of,
we'd wanna
I
especially
was kind
focus
of
on?
triggering down into the departmental equity, that all, that there's, you talked about it being a family, and oftentimes there's favorites even in a family. So I think that we need to make sure, because I think that some departments aren't feeling the love as much as others. So I'm trying to help, again, every department to feel supported.
any other thoughts? Because I'd like somebody to articulate this for us so we can write it down.
Right now, I'm noodling, right? I'm just thinking that
We
there's a
can-
lot of
we
stuff
can
going on
revisit.
there. and-
Yeah, we can also, I
What- what
mean, I think the idea of goal being the first sentence of our proclamation is fine. But I think we should, as a board, if it sounds like there's a consensus to engage our employees, is to engage in a survey. I don't think that needs to be a goal. I think that can be something we can talk about, if there's funding available too. I mean, I think this is something that's important. And, we've taken steps with compensation studies to provide wage equity. This is just another step in advancing that proclamation that we read an hour ago, is to encourage equity in all these various ways.
And I will say that the term equity has morphed into belonging. So I think belonging and community are two very powerful words. So it goes beyond equity. So I do think that we need to do a better job. The select board has a hand in it too. So I think we can all work. There's always room for improvement. And I do think that our workplace would benefit from a feeling of belonging and community. I absolutely agree with that.
Right.
I think when we start saying like equity, like
No, I know.
it's technically equity, but it doesn't make people feel good because not everybody, it's impossible to, no one gets paid what they think they deserve to be paid. For example, that's just one example. So we try and be as fair as possible. And in achieving that fairness, some people are unhappy. So it's really about belonging and community, I think.
Right, because we're still merit-based in our.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Can
Fernando,
I
you had a
just-
question?
Yeah, just to build on, I've got a couple of,
Go right ahead.
Can I talk about my other goals as
Please,
well?
yeah.
Can I do, okay, so I think we talked about internal, right? And I think there's internal challenges in the workplace that we need to understand and address, but also there's external. I mean, some of the stuff that's out there, so I think we do need to as well. I don't know what the model, again, I know Betsy, I don't know what an omnibus does, but if that's somebody that can go out there and understand the external challenges that our town employees, boards, committees, and volunteers are facing, I'd like to be able to take an action to address that as well, to see what we can do to.
I don't think I understand. I'm not understanding. What do you?
Well, harassment, I'm just being blunt.
Oh.
I spoke to when this has been coming up all throughout the whole process of this budget. I spoke to Jeff Blake. This is what's happening to our town employees, boards, committees, and things. And then Jeff Blake's answer is, well, unless somebody pulls out a gun, there's not much we can do. And I find that unacceptable. So this is what I'm trying to figure out. There's free speech, right? This big free speech thing. And right now it's
Our First Amendment.
It's our First Amendment is wonderful, and I totally agree with it. However, in my workplace before I retired, if my employees were subjected to that level of harassment I've seen, I could do something about that. I could address it. All right, so I'm questioning in the public sphere. I'm sure somebody will send me an email later on tonight.
It's probably already out there.
It's probably already out there. I need to check my email. Probably somebody is already out there saying stuff.
Oh, I'm already been whacked.
Oh, have you? Okay.
All right.
And it's acceptable.
Yeah.
I understand that. People have the right. However, where does it cross the line where our employees are not feeling good, are disappointed, are thinking maybe it's time to leave Duxbury and go work somewhere else because I won't get exposed to this kind of stuff? It does affect people.
Well, it's not just the employees, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's the volunteers.
the
It's
volunteers,
our
right?
members of all of our boards. It's
we're
the
all
five of us
volunteers.
sitting here.
Right? We're all volunteers, right? We get elected, understand, and
There's
and it's part
laws
of-
and it's a longer discussion.
Yes.
You're right. And I think putting out the right, correct information or
Yes.
or information that supports your argument is
Yeah.
appropriate. But for a goal, I don't know that that's a goal. I think we
That's
need.
impossible, you say.
Yeah, there's laws. There's,
Right, it's pretty hard.
and we're public figures and.
You have to live with it. How
And,
about
but for department,
department heads?
I think there's, I'm not going to get into every level of it, but
Right.
it's, And I don't think it's fair to speakers because, you know, you may be thinking of one person, but there's other people that think what I put out there is perfectly appropriate. And, you know, it doesn't, you know, I don't know, I don't want to go back to classes I took in college and law school, but there's been a lot of terrible speech over for 100 years, but you can choose to look away, and that's
which is what I do.
Right.
I'm just concerned about it. We get elected by the residents, but all at the same time we are employers through Renee.
I understand.
We employ.
I know.
And we have due care and attention for our employees. We're talking about that right now. If our employees are unhappy, we need to address it, right? And so we're going to look at the internal. But by the sounds of it, external, there's not much we can do.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I think, you know, what we're talking about earlier about the budget and steps we're taking, that's a way to garner more support and build a bigger tent and encourage more participation at our elections. And more support around the community. And I think that should be our focus in 2026 or 25, whatever we're in right now.
Can I just speak to that for a second?
Sure.
I hear what you're all saying. What I'm kind of hearing in underneath all of it is that we need some sort of social media presence or some sort of method to get information out. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't disagree. I don't agree with that. I
all.
think no response is the best response.
Tell you, I won't do it.
I don't.
No, we don't
won't do
respond
it.
directly.
I'll tell you
But
I
right
don't
now.
even look at it,
I'm not
so
the
I don't
guy.
even know what. But
Well,
I'm not the guy.
So how would you action the suggestion that we get more information out there? Because clearly, when we're talking about comments on social media that are at variance with what's on the town's website, I mean, folks can very easily go to the town's website and get the information.
Fact check.
So they're not going there for whatever reason. So what is it that we could do differently that would reach people where they are?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, sure.
We're talking a lot about social media and things like that. This didn't pass a town meeting by 197 votes, and nor should it be a goal of this board or the finance committee to pass an override by one vote. It should be to garner a large majority of people, and there's always going to be folks that will spend their last dollar on everyone else. There's also going to be a large majority. There's going to be a small minority of it that don't want to spend a dollar.
Right.
But it's creating a bigger tent, encouraging more voters at the box. I mean, there was only 4,000. There was probably 10,000 for a national election. Those are issues. I don't see that as what I would like to focus on is how we gain the support and confidence in the public trust going forward, rather than fighting First Amendment battles. I think I think this is. I think our role here and steps we should take are doing all of those things first. Creating a budget. We have the views of the public. We know we have the templates here. We have the website set up. The information's all there. It's how can we change this to earn the public's trust?
Right. So how about this then, right? So address the budget process incorporating the fiscal year budget lessons learned. And one step would be, that's an overall, right? So we need to work on that. We need to understand what happened and take steps to correct it, to rebuild that trust. So that's one, right? I do think a subset of that has to be for us to look at the budget process itself, with the select board recommending the budget. That has to be, I don't know if the board wants to take it up, but I think by putting together an article for the fiscal year 27 budget, i.e. for 2026, moving the town meeting to May would be could be an action that we could take on. So I'm leaving that one up. And then lastly would be to continue progressing PFAS mitigation.
Yeah, I've got that one on mine too.
So that would be my three things. Address the budget process incorporating fiscal year 26 budget lessons learned. look at the current budget process and see where the select board can get into a point, intersection point.
Point of
where-
entry.
Point of entry, where we end up recommending the budget, and then moving the town meeting to May, an article, and then, like I said, progressing PFAS mitigation.
Can I just insert one thing into your recommendation? Because I don't agree, I don't disagree with any of that, except from what I'm hearing from the Finance Committee for this coming year, because we won't have changed
Correct.
town meeting date. We need to have that discussion about the budget in probably August.
Yes, we need to, in fact, we need to sit down
Which
now
won't
and have
interfere
that
with your
conversation
getting it in
to see how
September.
we can, we can't wait till August. We need to sit down now and look at, and the school, because the school committees have a different timeline, right? So we need to sit down as a group and figure out Finance Committee, Fiscal Advisory, the school committee, the select board, get together with the town manager and the finance director and kind of map out how it's working right now and figure out how we can, have that point. And at the same time, and like I said, is I do not want to, we've got to be cognizant of the time and effort of the department heads and figure out what we need in terms of information to be able to recommend a budget without duplicating the hard work that the finance committee does for over many months.
Yeah. Can I just add my couple of things that have not been discussed?
Yeah, that's fine. Then I want to hear from Cindy.
Why don't we start with Cindy? All right.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to get a word in with you guys.
I have a bad habit, so I want you to speak.
No, one of the things that I heard during the override conversations is that people were concerned about us being, the tax base being 97% residential. And that, that being the reason, which I don't agree with, but that we don't have enough of a commercial tax base. And I'd like to start having that conversation and inviting people in. I mean, I think that it's maybe a partial solution for us, maybe not. But I think that it's part of the conversations about the budget going forward. Not a necessary goal in and of itself, but an item within within an over or larger goal to have that conversation.
Right. Essentially look at both sides of the equation, right? Fiscal equation, revenues and expenditures, right?
And, having non-residential taxpayers.
What?
Okay.
The task force did look at a lot of the revenue
What's a non-resident?
part of that,
Wouldn't
right?
that be commercial businesses and,
Okay,
Entities rather than people.
so change the zoning, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, to get away from the 97 versus 3
Yes.
split? Okay,
Right,
so expand zoning to
right.
allow commercial and retail?
having that conversation about whether people are, are
What do you
wanting
want,
to do that or
50-50?
not. Yeah, 50/50. No, I don't necessarily want anything one way or the other. I don't have a side. But the other thing that I don't want to give up, my other goal, and I talked about it a little bit a few minutes ago, is this issue with sea level rise, climate resiliency, all of that, again, it's the planner and the lack thereof. Does it go on the back burner? I think that conversation needs to be had, and I'd like to put that in there. We've got big issues. We've got a whole lot of work that was just recently done or is just finishing up in Snug Harbor. Yet, as far as I know right now, it's not going anywhere. Okay. And, we've had those conversations. We've had studies and studies and studies, and, things are, 100% going to be flooding by, 2030, and it's already 2025, right? So, and things are flooding already. So I don't want to drop that.
Right, and JR can tell us about some of that stuff. Mike?
Thank you. Talk about this big tent in getting more folks to the polls and involved in their town finances. We had a meeting on May 8th of 2024. DRC was here with a multi-phased approach. Folks I see at sporting events, fields like Lincoln, what they talk about is our fields. And They presented a plan, they paid for a consultant, and they whittled it down to a starting point. What I would like to do, where feasible, is to prioritize open field spaces. Hopefully, I didn't want to make this part of the goal because I want to hear from our town manager. I want to hear from the school, the schools, because they own some of this land. That was part of their part of this DRC's approach. What's feasible? What we can do at a town meeting? What could be incorporated into what we do here? Because I can tell you that while there was a large part of that sustainable budget that was for the schools, I think there was a lot of people that didn't go to the polls. I think we need to incorporate a lot of people and a lot of people's priorities going forward. I think this is an important one for taxpayers. They ask about the fields. They ask about equity in sports. What's available for females versus males. I think it's something we really should focus on as a board and prioritize. The other aspect, I'll leave the other ones. They were on there last year, and the only tweak I'd make to the FY27 is simply what I said before, is that we have a crack at Rainey's taking a peek, I would say, and so that he can seek our input earlier with his budget. And whether that means pushing out a town meeting or not, I think that's an important step that is consistent with the Town Manager Act.
Can I address the capital planning? Because I think that was on, did we talk about that, the capital?
It's on the, do you want to carry on to next year?
Well, I think that, I'm not sure that needs to be an actual goal. It seems to be, it should be just an automatic.
It is. We do it,
Because it can't
no
be
matter what.
5 years, because
Yeah.
you're already 1 year down, so now you've got to do the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So you're
They're
always
very good about doing that. They
supplementing.
always do
So I'm
that,
not
yep.
sure that we need to waste one of our
Goals.
goals
It's fine.
on that.
yeah.
And then just my last comment on this practice, what we're doing right here, right now, which is the goal setting. We were supposed to do this last week for some procedural reason. I think that's problematic because the first meeting after an election, you may have 2 new members on the board, or we're reorganizing. It just, if we could, as a practice, have this even if it's 2 weeks after or 3 weeks after, I think that would be, trying to have this conversation last week, we didn't do it, and I think that was, just not the best time to have this conversation. So I think in, subsequent years, if we could push that out, it would be preferable.
Can I just make a comment about that?
Sure.
I think this year was unique. We got hit by a tidal wave going into that meeting. So that was, I think we can put that this year aside. But someone who's running for select board should have a good idea of what their goals are walking in the door.
Yeah, they got a platform.
And they do. And they probably have a better handle on their goals walking in the door because they haven't been, bogged down in everything that you guys have been doing. I think it's the perfect time to do it because it sets the tone for the rest of, we can agree to disagree. I'm just giving you my feedback. I think it's critically important for all of the employees to know what the select board's goals are going into the performance evaluation process. That's how we're going to get stuff done. That's how we lock into step and achieve things together. And we're looking to the board to set the tone for behavior, for work, for priorities, and it's a critical time to do that.
And I appreciate that, Jeannie, and I just, my thought in response to your comment, I hear you, but I think if we have a new person on the board who may have an idea, or I'm sure, hopefully has some good ideas, but one of the great or terrible things about being up here is consensus. So, somebody might come up here with a great thought on issue A, but the other four members are like, this makes no sense for the town. So I say that just by way of suggesting that because we're not one person and can't just make decisions, and we have to come up collectively, and this is why it's taking so long. We've been at it for, I don't know, almost 45 minutes in trying to get to 5 or 6 goals. I would like to, being still kind of the new guy, I don't know that I would have contributed to the extent that I can now out of the gate. So I'm just offering that as reasons why maybe we couldn't do it right away. But with that said, I feel like we have some action items coming on. So one, if I can just hog the list here for a second, going back to last year as a guide, it looks like number 4, which had to do with Envision Duxbury, seems to be something we're all still very supportive of. And I realize that's stalled for want of a planner, although it seems to me that maybe we can make some traction in pushing the individual items along with the individual departments somehow, accountability. And I don't know that we necessarily need a planner for that. The list is already set up as to who's responsible for what. So I think we can get moving to some extent on Envision Duxbury, if only to remind people that the checklist is out there and that we need to see some forward action. So are we good on that one?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so who's taking notes on this?
Nancy.
Look at Nancy.
Do you want, what I did last year, just as a helpful, so what I not to put this over, I think we've got time, I took the notes from this meeting and I rewatched and tried to draft up a joint one after our meeting, because it's 9:20, and for you to try to remember all the things that we just said for the last 30 minutes is kind of, it might be helpful if you take Nancy's notes and because I think there was a lot of consensus here.
Yeah.
But it was helpful for me to take the notes, we'll rewatch it, and then circulate then we voted on it.
I've got no problems. I can send you my notes.
I've got mine, I'll give you mine.
We'll send them to you.
Well, that's the other piece.
I'll send them to Nancy, how about that?
This organ only
47
works
goals.
in open
Good luck with
forum
them.
or an open session, so we can't.
Yeah, but if you compile them behind the scenes with Nancy, I'll
We
give you
can
my
review it the next
notes.
agenda.
You can bring it back to the board and we can
You can
vote
draft it.
But I want to be sensitive to Jeannie's very real concern, which is the rest of the town's kind of waiting on us for the goal. So we've already.
We're gonna do it next week.
Kind of put you back a week, and this will put you back 2.
We did the same thing last
Jeannie's
year.
It's
okay.
I'd rather have them.
We're doing
well
our
done.
best.
No, I'd rather have them done right than fast. I get it. So are we all in agreement that between Nancy and I will curate a list
Yes.
that will be circulated and then voted
Yes.
on?
And I will send my stuff to Nancy.
Yes.
I recommend that we all send stuff, right? So,
Yep.
Well, mine's been circulated
yeah.
here.
Well, I guess that's
I can email it to you.
Fernando, just to address your point, that's what I'd be concerned about, that if we all now come up with 6 different things
No,
and they don't agree.
I've repeated that 3 times already what I'm asking for,
Yeah.
and so that's all I'm going to do is.
Okay.
I'm not adding any more.
All right.
It's basically
Well,
the budget.
okay.
April town meeting.
Then that's fine.
And progressing PFAS. I think lessons right.
All right, because the only thing on my list is a comprehensive plan. That's the only thing I ever have on the list.
I mentioned in public all of the things that are on my list, so I can just hand those to you.
The only things I did not mention is what was already on there last year about working with Duxbury Beach Reservation to help implement and maximize covered activities in the DBR permits, including deterrence to increase oversand beach access and continue to facilitate transparency regarding beach closures. I think 6
That's ongoing, right?
That's
Mike?
ongoing, yeah. That was in last year's, yeah.
Yep.
So
I think we made
I just wanted to
step
make
change.
clear to the public what's
Yeah,
remained on mine.
Right.
I also added just completing the seawall and continuing with the DPW project and seeking out and applying for grants for the seawall. I just want, those are just to-do lists.
To-do
But I
list, but
think,
they're ongoing,
I know
right?
that Rainey's doing both of
Those
those.
are going to happen.
Those are going to happen, so I can waive that one.
Right, and in my goals, I did also mention the beach access and, prioritizing increased access and
Yeah.
programs, like escorting, which we did talk about.
The escorting, well,
Another night.
another night.
So we're ready for the town manager report, I think?
Yes.
Okay.
Not tonight. There isn't one.
don't have
It's been all about the budget. Oh, actually, I do have one thing.
All right.
What?
What do you got?
Notification. Excuse me, notification was sent to me by the police chief last week. On 3 separate occasions in the past 2 months, someone has thrown large bags of feces on the property at Town Hall. The first occurrence was in front of the building near the rock wall. The second was to the right of the building on the sidewalk. And the third was in the area of the rear entrance. There were no visible suspects on camera at the rear of the building, but the police department has been notified, and they do know that they could be receiving calls if further incidents occur.
That's interesting. I had
There's
them.
my update.
So this isn't just somebody not disposing of their doggies' waste?
I'm talking
Okay.
grocery bags.
Oh, well, I had 2 dog bags thrown into my driveway, 2 different occasions.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's my report.
Well, I think we need
Is
to-
that, is that the First Amendment right?
No?
Not when it goes on somebody else's
That's
property.
disgusting,
That's
is
a
what it
crime.
is. It's disgusting.
I hope the police are, well, our police are excellent.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Committee appointments, reappointments, and I see Alicia's been waiting all night for her appointment, so we'll get right on that right now.
Yeah, I
We
move
have
that, the-
Sue Kelly's here to swear her in.
Oh, yeah.
right, nice.
Thank you, friend.
Thanks,
I move
friend.
that the Duxbury Select Board appoint Alicia Babcock to the MBTA Communities Working Group for a term ending 6/30/2026.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you for your volunteerism.
Thank you very much.
The following boards and/or committees have available seats. Conservation Commission, 1 seat. Design Review Board, Duxbury Cultural Council also have 1 seat. With 2 seats is the Economic Advisory Committee and the Municipal Commission on Disabilities. 3 seats, Taxation Committee, and lastly, the Nuclear Advisory Committee has 1 seat. If anyone is interested in volunteering on a board or committee, you're encouraged to fill out the Talent Bank form, which can be found on the Duxbury website under the Forms and Document tab.
Great, thank you. We have some minutes, executive session minutes from March 24th.
Right. I move to approve the March 24, 2025 Select Board Executive Session minutes regarding the King Caesar Fund matter, with the contents to remain sealed due to medical confidentiality as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
And 1 abstention. Okay. Open session minutes from February 24th.
Yeah, I move to approve the February 2024, 24th of February 2025 Select Board open session, as well as that of the 24th of March 2025 Select Board open session as presented and/or amended.
Second.
Any discussion on either of those
Oh,
minutes?
Nancy's waving.
Nancy's got a
yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, the 24th minutes, the February 24th minutes, we told that they
Oh.
just need to be tweaked a little bit more, so it's only really March 24th.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I better go start again.
No,
I'm-
it's, you know, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So these, only the March 24th minutes
yes.
before us.
I already voted those, right? Oh, wait. my bad.
That was executive session, that
Yeah, my
was
bad.
open
Yeah.
session. Any discussion on those draft minutes? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you. Announcements.
Right, recreational shellfish. License applications are available on the town's website under online payments. The current session expires 3/31/2025. Commercial shellfish license applications. Commercial shellfish license applications will be available April 1st in the Select Board's office in the Old Town Hall. You can apply only during the month of April, and applicants must be a Duxbury resident and have a Massachusetts commercial fisherman's permit showing endorsed shellfish. For more information, please contact the Select Board's office at 781-934-1100, extension 5402. 2025 dog licenses are available. Reminder, all dogs over the age of 6 months must be licensed annually. There will be a late fee in the amount of $25 assessed for each unlicensed dog as of April 1st. The next scheduled Select Boards meeting will be Monday, April 7th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. And we have a bonus shellfish season.
We do. Would
move
you
that-
like to declare it?
Yeah, I will.
All right.
I move that the Select Board declare a temporary bonus shellfish season for the commercial harvest of soft shell clams for the month of April, regulations as attached. For the commercial harvest of quahog, how do you pronounce it? Quahog.
Quahog.
I haven't been around in New England for a long time.
Like the town of Rhode Island.
It's only since
I was hoping it was
2011.
quahog season.
Quahog. Commercial harvesting of quahog clams for the month of April, regulations as attached.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? We have it. Would you
I
like to
move-
make one?
Oh, the final motion, can I do that?
Final motion, you may.
I move to adjourn the Select Board meeting.
Oh, second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?